we're gonna watch. Specifically, we're gonna watch the Israel versus Gaza leftovers number 61, which I didn't cover when it initially happened because it seemed like a lot of people were doing it, and also, goddamn, some of these leftover episodes are they're like 4 hours long. This is literally 4 hours long. I don't know if I have it in me to do this entire video. I gotta be 100% honest with you, okay?
This is something funny I found while playing Cyberpunk. It is naughty, but I mean it's video game naughty.
Video game naughty should be fine.
KV.
Awesome. 10 out of 10. There's a lot of yeah. Huh. Good for him. Good for them. I'm glad they're happy. They look very satisfied. All right, this is 4 hours long. People have been asking me to cover this though and give my take. So that was the shower, a dildo on a handle. Oh, gotcha. Oh, it did look like waters. They were great. I enjoyed it. Excellent. So we are going to speed this up, which, even increasing its speed by 25% is still going to get us through this quite a bit faster. Oh, for context, oh, well, that makes it less fun, Fortnite. Damn it. God damn it. Well, never mind. He's canceled now. Okay, we're gonna do this. I'm also gonna play RimWorld because RimWorld is fun and I like it. Also, anyone who donos while I play RimWorld, if we have a free character, you get named after a character in the game, okay? Or a character in the game gets named after you. Boom, we did it.
All right. All right. So welcome everybody to The Leftovers, a special edition where we'll be reviewing Taylor Swift's new Eras tour.
I don't think you can multiplayer RimWorld.
Catch that last night. VIP access, front row seats. Hasan, what were your thoughts on the show?
I think she's incredible.
She is.
What a generational talent.
Unbelievable.
And the best we got.
We're gonna play as a rich explorer.
She's the best of us. In actuality, we're going to be discussing the conflict between Israel and Gaza that's happening right now. Obviously, there's been a lot of
with Randy Random
emotional, charged stuff going on, but we're going to discuss everything. But I do want to make something very clear at the top of the show here, is that I've seen a lot of people expecting us to come froth and argue, and our friendship is going to end and the show is going to end or something like that. And I'm sorry to disappoint you guys, but that's definitely not what we're planning on doing here. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, instead we're going to solve the conflict in its entirety. Let's go.
It's never going to happen.
That's what we're going to do.
People who are like, it's just not happening. That's not the point of the show, which I like, and actually it's becoming more so now, is that we can have, I sound so dumb and corny, but we can have difficult conversations.
I feel so bad. Oh yeah, I was going to say, I was also just made more interested in covering this because I saw this clip.
Go listen to Hasan. Actually, you know what? Go listen to Hasan. People say, I need to go listen to Hasan. This is bullshit. Please, go listen to Hasan. Who fucking, by the way, yells at people in chat, calls them Zionist genocidal monsters for suggesting that the hospital wasn't bombed, okay, by the IDF, which is the same fucking thing that Hasan's fans come and tell me. So fuck that. Go.
I mean, he seems mad. I don't know if this is like leftovers is gonna be gone forever, but you know, this was a difficult conversation, and I don't know that the audience Hasan has cultivated is capable of surviving a difficult conversation like this.
And not hate each other, which is important because
Taboo topics.
Exactly, just like who's doing that?
I think that was Fresh and Fit.
Fresh and Fit, taboo
it?
topics.
No, it was Ab and Preach, I think.
Look, if people like me and Hasan, which are basically so close to the same ideals, can't have a amicable conversation about it, then there's no hope for anybody.
Okay, we're gonna land in it. Oh,
I agree.
Ooh, tropical rainforest.
Where do you want to get started? Because one thing I do want to say, and this is not necessarily about.
Okay, my plan, just in case any of you are curious, my plan for this run, we're going to land in the rainforest. Okay? And then the plan is going to be eventually, when we've accumulated enough wealth, to move north and survive on the icy expanse. Or, you know what? Maybe we should just do a sea ice challenge. That could be fun. Let's see if we can survive the sea ice challenge. The sea ice challenge. Yeah, I don't think we can do maybe the ice sheet challenge. Maybe we can do that.
This issue in particular, but in general, I feel like a lot of people do not have a way to contextualize
Just out of curiosity,
news and
I'm gonna see
information
what the sea ice
without,
biome is like.
Adding a little bit of drama seasoning to it, where like it's not necessarily here's what's going on, this is my opinion on it. It's always there needs to be a secondary market, you know, of like, oh well, Ethan said
Kyryu!
this.
Thank you for the
Rim
2
me
gifted
up,
tier 1
mama.
subs. Rim me up, mommy. You will be the second colonist. Thank you very much. Hey, look at that. Quarter of the way there. Whoa.
Or Hasan said that. What do you think about this? Or oh my God, they're gonna fall apart. Like I think that betrays
All right.
the
let's just see how long
that
this lasts.
betrays the values that you are trying to show people. If you're saying like I care about people dying, I don't want them to die, I want people to live freely, and then you simultaneously try to have discussions almost entirely around commentators and Twitter spats and whatnot. I feel like that is unproductive.
Right, and actually, people are doing that to both of us.
Yes.
Frankly, in fact, so much so, there's this one video that I saw on our subreddit, and I see it on Twitter too. It's getting a lot of likes and views. It's so fucking bananas.
I have not even watched it.
So
I just saw it and I was like, oh God.
they spliced.
Okay, we do need a
talking separately
psychopath.
about something, and Hasan talking separately about something, and they spliced it together to make it look like I was telling you that you deserve to die. Here, let me see it. Hold on, let me-
Jesus.
No, look at the title of
crazy.
it. It goes, debate. Ethan Klein tells his former co-host Hasan Piker he deserves to be burned alive by terrorists for his different views on the
Penny
Israel-Palestine
gifted
conflict.
asterisk 4 tier 1
And by the way,
asterisk
oh, we got a
subscription.
community note on it.
Thank you.
Penny,
1.5
thank you for the
million views,
4
yeah.
gifted
But anyway.
subs. That's incredibly generous of you. Subs. There we go. We're up to 15. How about them apples? Let's go.
No,
Thank you,
But that
Penny.
goes to
People
show
are
you-
doing that too on the one thing that pisses me off is people who are cutting shit that is like trying to make it sound like I said that if you're pro-Palestine, you deserve to die, which is fucking nuts. Clearly cut. And I've seen people doing the same to you.
here's why they're doing that. Okay, here's why they're doing that to you.
Okay, yeah,
specifically.
no, my character's just
Because
going to
you're
die
Jewish,
instantly.
You lived in Israel, and
Jack,
Ela was,
Here's
of course,
the rest of the donation, which was gonna be for 5 subs. Haha, thank you for being wicked cool. Your community is very comfy. Less than 3.
Mistress Lynn, thank you for the $15 dono. All right, let's go. My goodness, chat, coming through. Let's go. All right. Look, I'm almost certainly going to die on this ice sheet because there's literally no way for me not to.
Don't care about the spoops. Just want Rimworld self-insert for cannibalistic goodness.
Hell
So
yeah.
wahaha.
Let's
So
go,
wahaha.
Paladin.
BBBBBBB.
Thank you for the $15 dono. I tell you what, we are going to die, like, instantaneously, because I just have this one guy. When that happens, we're going to start a new colony with, like, a tribe of people, and then we'll have more people to be named after chatters. And you'll all get a character.
Of course, a mandatory conscript, also being an Israeli citizen. So people don't know what your perspective is and immediately say, okay, you want all Palestinians to die. You want Israel to ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip and ethnically displace in the West Bank. I don't believe that that's your perspective. And
You don't
I've never.
believe it? It's not.
No, I know that that's not your perspective. I'm
Just
saying
to be
that,
totally
like,
clear about that.
yes, but I think that it's important for you to clarify, and then I can clarify my position as well, because a lot of people, despite the fact that I know that I have to be on a very delicate, tight rope when discussing these matters, because it does often get racialized fairly quickly, and it's done as a deliberate attempt to try to misconstrue your position and debate a straw man. I think that you can, describe your position, then we can go forward.
Well, another thing to note, it is incredible how many people want this show to break up. Like, they're fantasize about it.
Yeah.
And I find that odd.
No, it's what I just described
I know,
earlier.
I
It's
know, but
drama.
like-
There's no way to contextualize the news because news is fucking boring and oftentimes it's depressing, right? When you see dead babies, when you see fucking building blocks being reduced to rubble, that shit is, one, usually impossible to contextualize if you're living in, like, fucking Connecticut. You know what I mean?
Katya, thank you for gifting a
and
tier 1
two,
sub.
It's
Have some
depressing
more
and boring.
Swedish
What's not boring is, well,
Streamer
this is
girl.
my favorite comment.
Also, thank you for still watching my content after all this time. I appreciate it.
Commentator, duking it out with my favorite commentator in a way that I can actually analyze, in a way that I can actually understand, and I'm gonna go to battle.
Oh, by the way, chat is off. You fucking savages in chat. Got to pipe down today. It's time to sit down and listen, right?
Sit
Dan?
down and
Okay,
listen.
so here, I won't interrupt you. I think it's good to clarify your position.
Let
and-
me clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, clarify your position on Israel and Palestine in general.
Well, first of all, just to talk about this clip that I guess some people have seen, I made an analogy. You might not disagree with it. My point was that, you know what, I don't need to explain that. Do I?
I don't know what the clip is, but I care more about you getting your point across
Yeah, here.
as it pertains to Israel and Palestine. Like,
Yeah. Here's what I'll say. And I like to say this at the top because people are always going to call me a Zionist. People are going to call me a IDF supporter, genocidal, all this shit. And I've been saying it every fucking day, every time I can say it. So if you see anybody saying that, you know they're liars and bad faith weirdos. So here's what I'll say about Israel, okay? Listen, since the first time I've said it, and I'll say it many more times.
Am I gaming right now? Yes.
The cabinet is run by genocidal maniacs, okay? They're led by Netanyahu, who should resign in disgrace and go to prison for being a war criminal.
Ethan, look, I don't understand why people give Ethan shit on his position on Israel. I genuinely don't know. Like, maybe it'll come out in this discussion, but like, dude keeps it 100. Like, Netanyahu is a vile, evil piece of shit, and like the Israeli state is responsible for an apartheid, and like he recognizes that.
Okay, he's made a coalition of the most like radically conservative freaks that don't represent, by the way,
Good
the
night,
majority of
Mithril Mist.
Israelis. And they're hellbent on genocide, frankly, overtly. They've committed tons of war crimes in Gaza, including the killing of children, obviously, because Gaza is one of the most densely populated places in the world. 50% of the residents are under 18, so when you bomb a building, the chances that you're killing children is pretty much 100%. Okay? It's fucking barbaric. It's unacceptable. It's disgusting. I've seen videos, I saw videos of Palestinian dads holding his dead, like, 5-year-old daughter. I mean, and there was another one that, like, as a father, it's even hard to talk about. This dude was holding his infant. It was like a year old. he was like patting her on the back and saying like his final goodbye. I mean, he's holding her like she's alive, like he's just burping her or something. I didn't expect to get emotional about that, but like I'm a new dad and that shit really fucks me up. And I hate to see it. It's not right. I think people in Israel that support the government and the government need to watch that shit. I think Israel shutting off water, power, and food to Gaza is insane. It doesn't even make sense. Like, what's the end goal there exactly?
I wanna cut in here for a second, and while you recollect your thoughts and say something. The feelings that you are demonstrating here, and the empathy that you're demonstrating and showing towards Palestinians,
Hey, Milord
is
Ines.
unfortunately not represented by our administration, and it's not
Thank you for the tier 1 sub. I appreciate it.
represented by our media. And I think that the irony is that in the aftermath of the Palestinian the Palestinian actions in southern towns in Israel, led by Hamas, the reaction from the Israeli population, specifically anti-Zionists living in Israel who are Jewish, and even Zionists living in Israel, was more tempered and more empathetic to the plight of Palestinians, and truly understood that the violence of this occupation and the violence of an apartheid regime and the violence of endless bombing campaigns in an open-air prison was squarely at the heart of the violence that Israelis experienced on October 7th. I think that is very courageous for people living in Israel proper who lost their friends to come out and speak out against their own government immediately. And it is cowardly and disgusting for Americans who are thousands of miles away, who will never be impacted by this, to refuse to reckon with that and to continue demanding more blood and aligning themselves with an insanely unpopular, insanely reactionary, far-right government who has deliberately propped up Hamas as the singular force time and time again, who has humiliated, bullied, imprisoned, and occupied and stolen the lands of so many innocent Palestinians. And it is shocking to me that the consensus in Israel is more tempered
And that's what pisses me off
than
too.
the consensus in American media.
Like I've seen way too many fucking people acting like all Israelis are fair targets. They're all settlers. They're all genocidal. Like there's way too much fucking dehumanization of Israelis and the refusal to see, like, even understand their perspective at all. Like if you can't understand why, after Hamas murdered up to now probably close to 2,000 people, if you don't understand why Israel would want to retaliate, then you're not in favor of peace. You're not, because
Okay,
because
but
I understand, and a lot of Israelis understand why Hamas exists and why Palestinians and Gazans want to fucking kill Israelis. I understand that, and I have that empathy. I feel that a lot of people, not all, even a minority, but enough that it's noticeable, don't have that level of empathy where they see Israelis as like full-blown, diverse human beings that aren't fucking genocidal freaks, you know what I mean? They just happen to be on the side that has a bigger fucking military and has international support. And the result of that is obviously that a ton of Palestinians die.
I think
Like how's there ever going to be peace? Like genuinely, if there's not empathy to at least understand. Like I'm not to agree with, but to at least understand.
look, I think Edward Said said it best, that it is not about, it's not even necessarily about designification of Israel. It's about maintaining peace so that everyone has a right to return and be able to live comfortably in their own homes. This area of historic Palestine did have Jews, Christians, and Muslims living side by side. before the 1948
Well, thanks for
Nakba
joining, Lord
and
Ines.
before the British occupation.
Okay, also, so far, we have Kairyu, myself, Penny, Mistress Lynn, which I guess autocorrected to Mistress Lynn, my bad, and Paladin Lost. As soon as we get more people, we will have Katya and Milord Ines. Let's go.
Occupation. There was a time where there was peaceful coexistence. Ultimately, though, I think that the reason why a lot of people get really passionate about this, or the reason why I think the American media does a disservice to show the full breadth of the conflict or even the Israeli perspective by regularly running to the right of the Israeli government. That is, I think, by design. It is because we give a lot of money to Israel for its security and its defensive operations, as we call it. And I think a lot of that money has to be justified to the eyes of the American population. That is, those are our weapons ultimately that are being used and being deployed. It's our training as well. And it is very beneficial for Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and many other defense contractors who saw tremendous gains in their on their stocks immediately after October 7. So to say that people do not have empathy for Israel, I don't necessarily agree with. I think your judgment is made on what you see on Twitter. You're like, there's an unimaginable amount of violence that took place in Israel, and then how can people immediately go to defend Palestinians in this action? And it's
Not
understandable.
Palestinians.
Well, I mean, people
Just
were
to be clear.
yeah, immediately go to defend these actions in general, and it's because emotions are high in that moment. But I don't think that I do not think that Western media across the board gives a similar perspective, one that you have on the Palestinian plight. I don't think that is represented in the media.
It's worth saying the Western media refuses to humanize Gaza. Okay, like
Yep.
that's the same thing.
It is by design.
And so,
so
it's just people. I'd like people to have. Let me finish what I was saying, and then you can kind of clarify your spot.
Go ahead.
I don't understand the water and power and food being shut off. Like, that makes no fucking sense. What's the end goal there other than just to let people die? Like, hospitals don't have power.
It is
respirators are
just to
turning
let people die.
Surgeries are being canceled.
Red Crescent paramedics were bombed yesterday after being allowed into the area to take care of people that were stuck inside of the rubble. They died.
Mm-hmm.
9 UN officials have died so far. Multiple journalists have died so far. It's relentless, and it is chaotic. It is ethnic cleansing, and every single media operative in the United States and in the Western world and the majority of our politicians have championed it.
I was watching the Israeli news with Ela this morning, and she was translating it for me on the news. They were saying the strategy is to get in as much bombing as possible before the international community makes them stop.
Yeah.
How fucked up and cynical is that?
Well,
Monstrous,
But they just
dude.
openly said that, right, Ela?
It's like news anchors like speculating about the situation and all giving their thoughts. It's not an official like
It's an analysis.
government or IDF
Yeah.
telling their strategy.
Well,
But they're all speculating, and they were saying how like, in their opinion, we have a short time to respond before the humanitarian cause there is going to be so bad that everyone will tell Israel, you guys need to stop. So some of the citizens are actually upset because they want them to respond harsher.
Right.
Cool.
Crazy. That's crazy. I want to say this about settlers in the West Bank are religious zealots. They're monsters. They're genocidal, fucking fundamental monsters. They are also, I would even say, settlers, they're participating in this dangerous conflict. Okay? And they're putting themselves in this dangerous place. Now, I want to make it clear just while I'm on this point, the people who were murdered outside of Gaza were not settlers. Those were normal motherfucking people living normal lives, living on kibbutz and like communes, fucking communists, living like a peaceful life with their families. They were not settlers. Settlers are involved in this war, I believe.
there used to be settlers in Gaza. The military had to
They removed
forcibly
them.
remove them from Gaza so they could completely shut it off and begin sieges whenever they felt like mowing the lawn.
So, and anyway, the Israeli government enables the settlements. They encourage it with the express purpose of erasing Palestinian land and making peace near as impossible as they can.
So there's something important to mention here, important to acknowledge here. I think that that what you just described, especially in the West Bank, which is settler terrorism, at least according to international law, and it's fully understood to be an illegal occupation, demands constant military support, because you cannot, over the course of 75 years, build settlements and act like you are turning a blind eye to it, maybe sometimes halt it, maybe sometimes continue those operations of building said settlements, bulldoze homes, build roads that specifically partition off areas where Palestinians are supposed to be living on their own land in the two-state solution that has been reaffirmed time and time again. You can't have that be your peaceful coexistence project and not recognize that of course Palestinians see that and think, okay, well, what the fuck are we supposed to do? There's no Hamas in the West Bank, and yet the Palestinian Authority is like collaborating with Israeli security operations, giving up 14-year-olds that were throwing rocks and shit like that, while they're losing their land, they're losing their homes. The area, according to B'Tselem, which is an Israeli organization, the area of West...
And B'Tselem is really good. Like I also highly endorse like the work that B'Tselem has been doing. 10 out of 10 stuff.
Bank of all of the agricultural land and all of the partitioned off lands that have been expanded into through settler terrorism, which is completely illegal, went from like 10% in 1967 to more than 75%. The areas that are partitioned off also have no contiguity, which means that, like, if you are Palestinian living in your own home in the West Bank, in order to get to your uncle's house, for example, you have to go through a multitude of IDF checkpoints. There are 2 separate license plates given to Palestinians living in the West Bank versus Israelis living in the West Bank. And I think many brave and very intelligent and very empathetic Jewish activists have talked about this in far better terms than I have. But one that comes to mind immediately is Gabor Mate, a Holocaust survivor, and a very famous physician, very famous doctor, where he said it best. He said he has friends that live in America and Palestinians that live in Canada that cannot return to their homes in the West Bank. They cannot return to their homes in even Israel proper, their family homes. And yet, his friends, if regardless of whether or not they've ever lived in Israel, or regardless of whether or not where they're from around the world, can go to Israel and go specifically to West Bank and be able to sit on top of Palestinian land and own that land. That is horrifying. That is impossible to come to terms with. And I think that violence is a necessity in the maintenance of such a structure, which now many NGOs and even former Israeli officials are considering is an apartheid. And it has been for some time now. And of course, that violence that
Good night, Mr.
Palestinians endure on a
Mist.
daily basis is going to create
True
more
Dark Canuck. Do
reactionary
not
forces
forget to like
within
the
it.
stream.
This is something that I have said about the invasion of Afghanistan and the invasion of Iraq. And this is something that I even said about Russia invading Ukraine, is that more reactionary forces are going to be seen as the emancipatory forces when an irredentist power or an imperialist power goes and tries to seize land that it does not own. This is the second part of the brutality of the occupation that has made it seem as though Palestinians have no choice, that has created no opportunities for them, that has led to Hamas being able to seize more and more power after being democratically elected one time in 2006, pretty much.
Right. And I do want to make clear that, again, as we talk about settlers and all this shit, that settlers are not the same as regular Israeli civilians.
True.
And I think, having been
Yeah,
listening...
they're American.
Actually, a lot of them are American.
Yeah,
Weird.
they're the most.
Yeah.
They are. My friend Noah Colwyn calls this the zealotry of the convert, where I was talking to him yesterday. He's a former editor-in-chief of Jewish Currents. I think he was editor-in-chief. He still is a contributing editor. We were talking about like the most reactionary, the most violent activity often comes from the likes of Baruch Goldstein, right? An American Israeli who went in I believe 1993 into a mosque and shot and killed 29 Palestinians who were praying during prayer, a person that was hailed as a hero by the current minister of the current administrator of the entirety of the Israeli police force, Itamar Ben-Gvir. Itamar
Yep.
Ben-Gvir and Benjamin Netanyahu are incredibly far-right politicians that now control the Israeli government. The last time that there was any kind of negotiation between Palestinians in good faith, between a person who was still a Zionist, like
Good night, Sheppy
Yitzhak
Hand.
Rabin, they killed him.
And remember, Itamar Ben-Gvir was one of those guys who showed up at the Wedding of Hate. Like, he was a guest at the Wedding of Hate, and he publicly defended the actions that happened there. You know, he tried to say, "Oh, no one there." You know, they were stabbing a picture of a 1-year-old baby, but no one knew who that baby was, which is just actually insane. What was the Wedding of Hate? I talked about it yesterday. To give you the condensed version, the Wedding of Hate is an event that happened in 2015. And specifically, it followed months after settler violence had targeted a pair of homes in the West Bank, and settlers firebombed the 2 homes, right? And 3 people died. One was a 1-year-old baby named Ali, and the other 2 were that 1-year-old's parents. His 4-year-old brother survived with severe burns all over his body, right? The Wedding of Hate was a wedding between people who participated, maybe not in those specific attacks, but in attacks like that. In the West Bank, they're called price tag attacks. They're done kind of as like acts of vengeance against perceived slights from Palestinians, and this applied at the scene of that attack. In the burned rubble of that home, one of the attackers spray painted a Star of David and wrote underneath in Hebrew, I think something just like vengeance or revenge, something like that. And the Wedding of Hate occurred several months later, and one of the people getting married was one of these people who participated in these price tag attacks, and it was notable because it got caught on camera and made its way online. And in the Wedding of Hate, guests at the wedding took out knives and stabbed a picture of the 1-year-old Ali who had been burned to death in that fire. Just the guests walked up stabbing the picture of this baby. And then they sang a verse out of the book of Judges. Something about may we be avenged on the Philistines for our 2 eyes. I'm paraphrasing here, but instead of saying Philistines, they said Palestinians. And yeah, like it's just like the level of psychotic hatred within Israel from settlers towards Palestinians is really hard to convey, but that story does it. I mean, they were celebrating the burning murder of a 1-year-old baby and then stabbing its picture. His picture. Like, yeah, so that's what that is. And I'm not going into as much detail as I did yesterday. but when the Bassem Youssef video, Bassem Youssef second interview goes up, I tell that he mentions briefly the wedding of hate, and I elaborate a lot more on what that is. But that's the short version.
And the people that called for his assassination, like Ben Gvir, are now in positions of power in Israel to show you how.
Yeah. By the way, Itamar Ben Gvir is like the minister of like security for Israel. Like he's, yeah.
Much the attitudes and the governance has changed over the course of.
No,
the
it's a
past 3
it's a
decades in
fascist
Israel.
state. Yeah.
I want to say that I agree, and a lot of people in Israel do. It's disgusting, the people that are there right now in power. And if I can add something about the settlers, that's another point of frustration for a lot of Israelis. They send the soldiers to protect them. Soldiers that have to put their life on hold because the IDF is mandatory. They're just 18-year-old, they're children. They have to go and protect the settlers. The settlers don't go to the IDF. Orthodox people don't serve in the IDF.
Fucking nice.
Yeah, this is
insane.
yeah.
Hold on.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm done.
No,
I was going to say that the amount of people that don't know that I've seen that IDF is mandatory service is crazy. Hila is not serving the IDF ideologically because she wants to fucking kill Gazans or whatever bullshit people always say about her. It's mandatory conscription. It's mandatory. Every Israeli has
That's why
to
there's
serve.
organizations such as IDF Veterans Against the Occupation that are very.
Yeah, like literally, if you don't serve in the IDF, they throw you in prison.
That are organizations that I rely on when making assessments on what's going on the ground in Israel as well. And here's the thing, this is a relatively controversial perspective. It's just that the official government attitude has oftentimes, or at all, as a matter of fact, ever reflected any kind of attitude within the Israeli population, as it has either deliberately or in secret continued the settler expansion protocols since 1967 especially. So that's basically burning the candle on both ends, okay? On the one hand, you're telling Palestinians, hey, if you collaborate with us, we are still going to have these psychotic American settlers come to your uncle's house and take it away from you, bulldoze your house, partition your neighborhoods, okay, and set up a two-tier checkpoint system that B'Tselem calls, like I said, the permit regime, and constantly harass you. They can spit on you, and if they spit on you, the IDF's official protocol in that situation is to defend the settlers. They're not there to defend the Palestinians.
Mm-hmm.
Like they might in certain instances, but overwhelmingly, their job there is to specifically defend the settlers.
And again, like Hila was touching on, you're sending young men out in harm's way to protect these provocateur, fucking religious zealots, radicals. And again, like Elis, the irony being that they don't even need to serve the military. I mean, it's a fucking joke.
Yeah.
So I think that it's especially important for people to keep in mind that Israel is so far from a monolith. It's people need to understand that, and that people need to understand that we're not all guilty of the crimes of our government. Because if that was the case, heaven would be empty at the end of the day. I mean, this was the analogy I was making. If you're American, and if we're gonna blame the citizens of Israel and say they're all, and some people have been saying this, and I have clips that I want to watch later, saying that all Israelis are occupiers in fair game, and deserve to die, essentially. If you're willing to say that, then if like a terrorist cell comes to a fucking neighborhood in LA and wants to do revenge for the million Iraqis that the American government murdered during that war, then you're telling me you have no problem with these terrorists coming and killing everybody you know?
I mean, you are sitting next to someone who said America deserved 9/11, by the way.
Okay,
So
well, how would you
I want
feel?
to let you know.
How would you feel if people were blaming you for the Iraq war and coming and killing your fucking children and your grandma and your parents and your friends and your family, burning your house down, burning people alive?
I don't disagree with you on civilian casualties. I think that ultimately we have a moral obligation to speak out against our government and do everything we physically can to stop that kind of bloodshed. I agree. And I think that plenty of Americans, at least, kind of recognize that this is a war machine that they cannot stop anymore. So my goal, at least, is to get people to not champion it. And the same goes for Israeli action, the Israeli government's actions specifically, just like the American government's action. Because at the end of the day, what I want and what I believe many of my friends who are Palestinian advocates and activists and Israeli activists as well on the ground, what they all want is peaceful coexistence. But peaceful coexistence will never be achieved as long as governments can behave in whichever way they want, especially as it comes to blood and soil propaganda and the consequences of that propaganda being, blood and soil actions. That's same with America, same with Israel.
I think that Israelis, and again, I hope that you'll see where they're coming from when you say they're cagey, they're paranoid, they're scared, and they feel threatened constantly.
Yeah.
And so when Israelis see a ton of leftists talking about, go Hamas, cheering on Hamas, or saying like super hyperbolic shit about like civilians are all settlers, or or saying shit like, listen, it's a revolution. What do you expect? Like, what is a revolution supposed to look like? Or whatever of all of these qualifiers, basically, that people want to make. The Israelis see that, and they say, oh, these people just fucking hate us. They just want to kill everybody. That's why we're going to vote for these scumbags.
I don't think that the people that vote for those scumbags.
Wait, did Hasan say America deserved 9/11? Yes, Hasan famously said that America deserved 9/11. Specifically talking about like the history of like American intervention in like the Middle East, and like basically talking about how America armed the Mujahideen and basically created a lot of the conditions that gave rise to 9/11. Like that's essentially his argument was along those lines. But then of course he went and said something that is very easy. I mean, I would argue even like, yeah, obviously everyone's going to say, you just said America deserved 9/11. What the fuck is wrong with you? like, yeah.
Are motivated by like some random Twitter person being like, "This is a revolution."
It's a feeling that people get. It's not a random tweet.
Yeah. So
hold on. Go ahead, Hila.
I want to say Ethan is right, and so many people in Israel just feel like it's an existential threat. It's just this: everybody wants us dead. That's how we grow up. I grew up like that. All of our borders, they all want us dead.
Rockets are always coming over.
I was afraid to go on a bus as a child.
And again,
it's like that's your life. You're under threat all the time.
And it's not. And it's important to say this is not about right or wrong. It's about having empathy for the Israeli experience.
Okay.
And how and it's not about right and wrong. I have to say that. I have to emphasize that. It's got nothing to do with that. Okay? It's about understanding their perspective and knowing that when you have these super, accepting views on violence and revolution and all this shit towards Israelis, it's not one tweet that people see, Hasan. It's all the shit people see over the years all the time. And it causes them to act irrationally.
Okay. I think that you bring up a really good point about paranoia. The reason why, well, first of all, I mean, we don't have to get into like the history of why Jewish people would be understandably paranoid and worried, considering how they have historically been singled out as villains every single fucking time, from blood libels and pogroms all the way to the Holocaust. So,
and so you would understand it's hard for some people to distinguish. No, I know you do, but 100%. I'm just saying this. I'm just saying this.
100%.
You might understand how it's hard for some people to distinguish anti-Semitism between like criticism, especially when it's like a criticism that's very lax on violence against Israelis.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely correct on that front. Here's what I will even dive into further, and this is something I talked about on my stream as well. The paranoia now that manifests inside of Israel, as far as I understand, I don't live in Israel. I've never been to Israel. Is, at least from everything that I have read on not just Israel but also apartheid South Africa and the Algerian anti-colonial action against the French and numerous other formations of occupation and the emancipatory struggle there, the paranoia manifests and becomes a part of your identity because of the violence that is a necessity for the maintenance of apartheid. Because it's, of course, you it's almost
Look,
the same
Israel
as,
was
like,
under
Americans
threat
being very
before all
violent
this
people.
shit happened. I mean,
What's up?
from the moment Israel was established, the neighbors were trying to kill them.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we agree on that. I
Really?
will say that I think the Nakba
Come
was,
on, bud.
an unjustifiable act of violence that was the formation of the state.
I mean, yes, the Nakba is also an unjustifiable act of violence. Also, like, there was no way to found the state of Israel in a way that did not piss off literally everybody in the region. Is this recent, Hasan? This is from like a month ago, maybe. Like this is maybe like a week after the October 7th attack, so like 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago.
State. Now you can say every state is formed through an act of violence. All enclosures are defended through acts of violence, certainly. But I think that there was, this extends, like what you say to West Bank, what you say about West Bank settlers was the original position of the Israeli state's formation. And this does not, in current day, justify like random Israeli children that are born inside of Israel proper to be considered enemy combatants. I agree with you there 100%, because that is not problem solving, that is looking for vengeance. However, if we are to say that like Israel from its development, like in its inception, has always been under the threat of violence from other nations, bordering nations, certainly, sure, but Israel's formation was a violent one.
But let's just be real. Hey, let's be practical. I'm talking to the Israeli psyche.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, 1973, every bordering Arab state wanted to just coalesce to destroy Israel. Okay. Like, this is ingrained in the Israeli psyche, this kinds of shit.
And like, this is true. And like, again, to kind of put forward one of the historical reasons why, like, the reason for that was that in 1948, Israel expelled like 700,000 Palestinians and created a massive humanitarian crisis across the Middle East. Like, there was a reason why Israel's geopolitical neighbors were interested in removing like the state of Israel. Now, is that justification? No. We're just understanding why this is, right? And it is understandable for people who were, Israelis who were living there at the time and perceiving this threat to come to various conclusions about like the need to defend themselves, the need to be extremely violent towards their neighbors. This is understandable, but it in no way justifies their actions towards the Palestinians. Yeah, you have to acknowledge like the history of like Jewish trauma. You have to acknowledge the history of Palestinian trauma. You have to acknowledge the fallout that the expulsion of Palestinians from the historical area of Palestine is perceived by the geopolitical neighbors who had to take in those refugees. And not just take in those refugees, but like in some of the neighboring states around Israel, you still have refugee camps from 1948. Like, it's not just like, for a lot of these places, it's not just like a thing that happened 80 years ago. It's a thing that happened that is constant. It's a constant reminder, not just to the people expelled, but to the places they were expelled to.
Even back then in 1970, people were just born there. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not even saying right or wrong. I'm saying it's important to empathize with the Israeli experience if you ever want to achieve peace. Because otherwise, the only other option is one side kills the other side completely.
Yes.
That's the only end to this, otherwise.
And the side that's going to kill the other side completely is not going to be the Palestinian side. That's the point. Like, that's never... I don't think that is ever going to happen. I don't even... I don't even believe that is legitimately what every single Palestinian wants either. Just like I don't believe that's what Israelis want across the board.
I'm not saying
I wanna
anybody
say
wants
something.
that. I'm saying that's what the peace that they're working towards when they don't have the ability to empathize with the enemy. You don't see them as human beings. They're never going to fucking see you as human beings either.
I
And
know,
you're
but
never going to meet in the middle. And
you
they'll never
recognize
be.
that the same goes for like
I'm talking about both sides, man.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you that dehumanization does occur, but I also believe that one side does still hold all of the power, and that is the side that is the state that has been backed by the entirety of the Western world, that gets that has an incredible security apparatus that, for the first time ever in 50 years, was actually shattered. Which is why I think there's like a lot of fear internally inside of Israel and a lot of anger towards the security candidate Benjamin Netanyahu specifically. But overall, it is certainly Israel's conflict to end. You know what I mean?
Eli, you were trying to say
Can
something.
I add that my generation's grandparents are people that survived the Holocaust, and they escaped to Israel to start the country for Jewish people because they were, we all know the Holocaust. They were all, butchered. And what happened this time is a really scary reminder to all of us Jewish people, and that's how I feel, at least, that it's a reminder. The Holocaust wasn't that long ago, and every year on Holocaust Day, the thing they tell you is never forget. You always have to tell the stories to everybody about what happened at the Holocaust. And it's always like something taken for granted for me. You just grow up and you're like, yeah, Holocaust Day, it happened, we all get it. But what happened this time is really scary, and it really does bring up this topic. And
See, I don't think that you can even say something like that without starting a debate. And I don't think that's right.
I think the reason why people would react to it, or even myself, as a matter of fact, would react to that is because while you're absolutely correct and your feelings are totally valid, what is happening currently is a ongoing, at least 75-year campaign of ethnic displacement upon people who had nothing to do with the Holocaust. And that is, and
Dude, we're just talking about the Israeli psyche. I don't
No,
know.
I understand.
So what is it you're saying though? Like we all know that, but we have to be real about how we interpret everybody's suffering. Everybody is like, bro, you don't know how crazy it was. Like we were listening to the news on the day it happened live, and families are calling in whispering. The terrorists are killing their children in front of them, burning people alive in safe houses. Shit, you know what I mean? Shooting babies with AK-47s. And so I'm just saying, like, it's important to
honestly, I think Ethan has a really important point here. Like, you have to recognize, right? This is absolutely awful. Right? Like, just point blank. No qualifier needed right there, That's just awful.
empathize with how a Jewish person, or specifically an Israeli, might feel hearing these phone calls.
there are kids that survived because they were laying under their dead parents' bodies, and they laid there for hours, the whole day, and that's how they survived. And the last time we heard stories like that was at the Holocaust.
And I'm not saying it's not about right or wrong. It's just about like having the empathy to understand your quote enemy, to understand the perspective. And I'm not asking Gazans necessarily even to be like, oh, well, I appreciate what they're going through. I'm talking about like
silly serious.
people who want to fucking debate it all day long. And, this stuff does influence people. The demonstrations you see out there that happened like immediately afterwards, these people have an effect on attitudes around the world.
I don't think that they have any say or any effect on the Western world's united defense of Israel.
It affects
they immediately,
anti-Semitism, and it affects how people treat Jews, and it normalizes, by the way, treating Israelis like animals.
I don't believe that we should treat Israelis like animals. And one thing that
I'm a firm believer that they should not have put Israel there and done basically anything else. I get this didn't happen in a vacuum, but yeah, this is horrifying. Well, yeah, like honestly, a lot of it comes down to just deciding to plop a a new country down into a place where other people were already living, right? And like we learned the other day, you know, like Palestine was not the first place, you know, suggested for the location of a Jewish state or a place to you know, send the Jews, right? Like people were floating ideas for like Madagascar, like you know, like or some multiple. There were multiple proposed locations in Africa, like, but ultimately when Europeans tend to do that, it doesn't go particularly well, right? Just look at Pakistan and India, for example. They also considered Argentina, yeah.
That you have, I think, that many people do not, is the experiences that you mentioned, as far as children hiding under their parents' bodies, is in this very fucked up way identical to the existence of people living in Gaza every single day under
Yeah, we're
brutal
just gonna
fire from a much more superior military force. The reality is that most of the world, most of the Western world, not only does not see that, but also immediately rushes to equate people saying "Free Palestine" across the board in an unflinching way to a defense of Hamas or Hamas operations and whatnot.
Dude,
Are there people who do defend Hamas? Certainly, but ultimately, the overwhelming majority of activists that I know, the
There we go.
Haaretz editorial board, and the perspective of like Shin Bet officials that say that Israel's actions in the West Bank is becoming a security risk because it is radicalizing Palestinians into taking an incredibly anti-Israel posture. Former Mossad members, former Shin Bet officials.
I mean, like, what Hasan is saying here right now is correct, right? Like, internally, there are many members of the Israeli military that know that the actions that are being taken by the state of Israel are forming this violent resistance to Israel. You know, is Hasan Palestinian? Yeah, no, he's from Turkey.
United in saying the same exact thing.
And you know, these terror attacks do the same. They radicalize Israelis.
Of course, I understand that violence begets violence. That is a constant, no matter what. So what we have to remember is who holds the power to scale it back. Who holds the power to stop the violence?
I think a lot of people do know that and remember that.
Yeah, and so when people say that this is
Kyryu.
this
I hate fascism so much that I had to donate an Antifa Rasengan.
Thank you for the 3 gifted tier 1 subs. I appreciate that, friendo. Thank you so much. And that brings us over halfway towards our goal for the day. Let's go. Thank you so much. Wait, was Hasan born in the US? I thought Hasan was born in Turkey.
violence that occurred in Israel proper is directly a consequence of the brutal apartheid regime and the conditions that it set forth for Palestinian
that's a
people.
fine statement that I agree with.
Yeah. So when they say that, you're saying that people equate that with like a defense of Hamas.
No, that is not what I'm saying.
There are people
that is not what I'm saying.
There are Gazan
Just
people.
to be totally clear, dude.
There are Palestinian Authority people. There are people in Gaza that are not Hamas at all, or there are Palestinian Authority people that have been going and doing the rounds in Western media. And the question always is, do you condemn these actions? Do you condemn these actions? Of course they condemn the actions. But the reality is that after condemning the actions 1,000 times over, it feels like the goal there, if you want to understand and empathize with the Muslim side of the conversation, it feels like the goal there is to derail, to stop talking about Gaza, stop talking about Palestinian people, just condemn the actions and shut the fuck up. And even if you do, as I have time and time again, people still go, well, your name is Hasan, you're Muslim, you're a supporter of terrorism. And this happened in the immediate aftermath of 2001 and 9/11. And ironically, as far as I have seen, at least in the Israeli left, the position is significantly more tempered than the American liberals were at that point, where George W. Bush's approval rating shot up to 91% after 9/11, where America's comfortable security blanket was penetrated, and our collective consciousness changed in that very moment to say, oh my God, we can actually experience this violence in our own homes. And the same goes for Israel as well, where you've mentioned rocket fire. Over the course of the past multiple decades, since 2000 onward, before the October 7 operation, that the the casualties were, of course, asymmetrical. Rocket fire still ended up killing people in Israel proper.
Again, it's like
But
you can
that,
look at the numbers, but like of course, because Israel has it's still the provocation, it's still the attempt. You know what I mean? Just because they have the technology to shoot it out of the sky doesn't mean that the people in Israel are not going to be affected by it.
No, I understand that, but there's
Also, I want to say
there's
I
something
don't.
different,
I
though.
need to make something clear
What's
that you touched on. I don't think people who say I support Palestine are pro-Hamas. That's fucking insane.
Okay.
It's like the opposite of everything I've ever said. Okay, there is something I noticed that rubbed me wrong, which was that as the news was breaking, as people were still calling in saying, I'm in my safe house, I hear the terrorists
Yeah.
outside killing my neighbors. People are on Twitter or whatever, or activists, whoever, saying, let's go Palestine. Go Palestine. So how am I? It's the timing, Hasan. It's important. Like, we got to make this huge distinction. When people are saying go Palestine as they're terrorists killing people, that
Hey,
to me,
Charlie.
I don't know who else they're cheering on other than Hamas.
Okay.
Now, if you wait, like, you know, it's the timing, dude. It does matter.
There's an asymmetry to the violence, but there's also an asymmetry to the coverage as well. What do I mean by this? Mia Khalifa is a good example. You and I were talking about this on the phone earlier. Mia Khalifa said things that I find to be distasteful and wrong. Okay.
Worse than that.
I think it was distasteful and wrong. I think it was callous. The indifference to violence that civilians are subjected to on the Israeli side as well is callous. However, the reaction to Mia Khalifa has never ever occurred on the other side.
You're right.
When Israel
You're
is
right.
engaging in bombing
Yeah,
campaigns.
it's fucked up.
And like you said, the horrific images that you saw that draw so much emotion out of you of, like, you know, Palestinian fathers holding their daughters in this open air prison. There is no equivalence. I think a lot of people who have been advocates for Palestinians for many, many years, especially if they're Muslim, know this reality, that you have to be incredibly careful all the time with your rhetoric, and that even in an emotional moment, you can never never say something that will be misconstrued. And Mia Khalifa said something that was inappropriate and unacceptable.
Hold on. She showed a picture of terrorists roaming in a pickup truck murdering civilians. She described that as a Renaissance painting.
Yeah.
And she went further and said,
Oh my
"Will
God,
the Palestinian
what?
freedom fighters please flip their phone
I know.
vertically." I mean, that's worse than unacceptable.
So
it's evil.
So you're correct on that.
Jesus Christ! I didn't hear about this one. What are they actually trying to establish in this conversation? I think they are trying to navigate. Honestly, great question. I think they're trying to navigate having a conversation where Ethan, a Jewish man, is trying to convey to Hasan and his audience that, like, you know, he has friends and family in Israel who, like, are scared, who were scared for their lives, and, like, you know, and that's a scary thing, right? And there's a reaction by some people on the left that is just kind of dismissive of that. When like the October 7th, like you guys know, like there after the October 7th attack, like there were people who were like posting like pictures of like the paraglider and being like based. When the reality is, like, those like Hamas fighters like massacred like 200 people at a concert, you know, and like there were people on the left who were trying to kind of like be like, well, that concert was ghoulish because it was near the Gaza Strip, and it's just like, yeah. So like Ethan is trying to navigate that, right? And Hasan is trying to convey, like, the plight of the Palestinian people. And kind of the problem that they're running into here is that Ethan agrees about the plight of the Palestinian people, right? He agrees that Likud is a fascist political party. He agrees that Netanyahu is a war criminal, right? Like, he agrees with, like, Hasan on, like, I would say almost all of it, right? But the issue that they're running into is kind of a disagreement on messaging on the left. Talking, and I think they're kind of trying to navigate like how to kind of, I guess, express that without, going into like just I hate you. you know, like, does that, yeah, like trying to remain, trying to retain like the humanization of Jewish people and humanize Palestinians, and like simultaneously say like the attack on October 7th was horrific, while also saying you can understand like the events that set it into motion, right? So there's a lot of these nuanced positions, right? Which is almost 10,000% undermined by the fact that like Hasan, the audience Hasan has cultivated, just want Ethan's like Ethan's head on a silver platter, like it seems like. Like I don't think Ethan is in favor of dehumanizing Palestinians or even oppressing Palestinians. And yet, like, from the critical reaction I saw online around this, like, his audience certainly seems to have made Ethan out to be like a horrible anti-Palestinian figure. So like I think that's kind of what they're dealing with right now. And Charlie, this is I'm playing RimWorld, and anyone who donos will become a character in the game once we get more people in our little town in Rivertown. Oh yeah, people were also attacking Ethan Klein's wife, Hila, because she served in the IDF, which literally everyone born in Israel has to do, otherwise they send you to prison. So
Okay.
So let me ask you this though.
Yeah.
When Lindsey Graham goes on and says this is a religious war and we must ethnically cleanse, we must wipe our
Evil
enemies,
should get the same coverage.
No, I know, but it doesn't, Ethan. That's the
But what-
point.
I-
Like
I
Marco
understand,
Rubio,
and
Marco
I
Rubio's call for ethnic cleansing. These are people in positions of power. These are people who are literally facilitating in the bloodshed. These are people who actually are engaging in the continuation. These are not
you know what's the
former
problem?
porn stars who were Christian Lebanese who now.
Whatever, dude. She was getting a lot of attention. People were liking it. It wasn't like. But here's the problem.
That doesn't.
Here's
But
the
that's
problem.
meaningless, is
Bro,
what I'm
let me
saying
talk.
in the grand scheme of things, because that doesn't.
Hasan,
stop
let
the
me make my
bombs.
point.
No, go ahead.
When you
and like part of what is happening here is Ethan's trying to navigate this because he likes Hasan and wants to be able to maintain this friendship and this show that they've built together, and it's hard to do that with like some of the messaging that is put out by Hasan's community.
when you say like the timing is fucked up, or like why does Mia Khalifa get all this shit, and it's like always a whataboutism. It's always like you can never just say yes and also can we fucking hold Lindsey Graham accountable, which I agree, and it's crazy the shit they say, and they should get more attention for it. But it's like
I don't believe, like, Ethan Klein doesn't live in Israel. Yeah, Ethan Klein lives in California. I don't think his wife is currently serving in the IDF.
like there's a refusal to acknowledge like it's always about like, well, what about us, which I understand.
Okay, Gila served. I'm getting intel from YouTube chat. Gila served 20 years ago.
But it's like you have to
He has dual citizenship. Well, yeah, a lot of Jewish people do.
say yes, you have this thing and we also have this thing, and not like in the same breath say but yes but like it just doesn't feel, it feels fucked up.
I think the former Palestinian Authority member that went on like BBC and did the rounds in the UK said it best, where it was every single time you bring me on here when Palestinians have done anything you demand condemnation from me. Okay, we have done this. We have done this so many times. I am not Hamas. My family members were killed by Israel. 6-year-olds, like 6 of my family members were killed by the Israeli occupying force. I have condemned it every single time. I've condemned Hamas every single time. But the reality is that no such condemnation is demanded from the media when Israeli officials are brought on to talk about like genuinely genocidal terms in which they're wiping out Gaza, and that is a constant, and that has never ever been anything like there's never been any equivalence whatsoever. And I think that people who are passionate, or people who say people who are callously indifferent to the wanton violence of retaliation that is reactionary to apartheid are thinking that they can get away with saying these sorts of things because they've seen people who are defenders of Israel say infinitely worse things as more bombing campaigns have continued. More than 1,200, almost 2,000 Israelis died. Israelis are terrified of a violent retaliation, right? Israelis now understand better than ever before the feeling that people in Gaza experience on a daily basis, the fear that they live with on a daily basis. That is going to breed more hostility, and that is going to play Palestinians directly into the hands of the most radical, the most fundamentalist forces that were directly propped up by the Israeli government, by Mossad. Hamas was seen as a counterweight, a counterbalance to secular forces and Marxist and socialist forces who also were violently, who participated in violent acts as well. However, the fundamentalist Islamist Muslim Brotherhood cutout was directly logistically supported by the Israeli government and has been propped up specifically by even Netanyahu and every other Israeli government as the only force to take seriously for Palestinians. It's impossible to ignore this when talking about the violent retaliation. I think that
I agree, dude.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that. I think equally it's important for Israelis to understand why there is, if the Israelis cannot empathize with the idea that why people want to do violent retaliation, why people support Hamas, then we're also never going to have peace.
Yes, and
everybody needs to empathize.
And I think it's more important than ever to ensure that people recognize that both in the Western world that props up the far-right Israeli regime, that turns a blind eye to the violence, and it's important for our brothers and sisters that are living in Israel proper, that are anti-Zionists, that are also fighting that very same battle every day, to make sure that people understand that the only way out of this, well, there's 2 different ways out of this. It's ethnic cleansing. It's like doing a final solution to the Palestinians, or it's a pathway towards developing a nation state where Palestinians, Muslims, Christians, Jews can live, coexist, and have equal rights and equal representation.
Right. At the end of the day, all I'm asking is for people to be able to say that, terrorism is bad, no matter what, without an exception, without subtext. No, listen, without a fucking asterisk, it's like, yeah, but, I mean, what the fuck, man?
No, I understand where you're coming from with that. I think,
and I'm not saying you do it, by the way.
Giannis Varoufakis talked about this, where he said there was a practice in the ANC in apartheid South Africa that was called necklacing. I'm not entirely sure what it was. It was brutal. The ANC originally under leadership of Nelson Mandela demonstrated peacefully multiple times. There was a police retaliation in apartheid South Africa where 69 demonstrators died. Obviously, the conditions were brutal. They had this concept called a pencil test, you know what I mean? Like where they would put a pencil in your hair to see if you were, how non-white you were. If the pencil stuck, you were considered non-white and not allowed to go into certain places. Now, all of that was violent. The maintenance of that was violent. When all was said and done, Nelson Mandela realized that violent reaction was demanded from the people on the ground, demanded from the emancipatory forces, demanded from the 90% black people that comprised the South African.
Charlie, thank you very much for the $5 dono. Super chat. I appreciate it. Have some money from my phone company? Hell yeah. Thank you very much. Wait, really? Yes, really.
African population. He was jailed. He went to Algeria first. He went to Ethiopia. He talked to revolutionaries. He talked to Marxists.
Oh, come on.
He came back to Africa. He was immediately South Africa. He was jailed. Time and time again, the government demanded that he denounce the violence. He said, "How can I talk
Why
to you
is
on
the
equal
video?
conditions when I am chained?
Why is the
How can you
video
make?
shitting
How
itself?
can you put? How can you put my freedom as a talking point, as a way to get me to denounce violence when you have made no efforts you've made no conciliatory efforts. You've made no efforts in understanding the position of people that you have subjugated, that you have forced to exist in these apartheid conditions. At the end of the day, nobody remembers the violence of the ANC forces, because the violence of the apartheid regime was
Seemed
all
to
too
help
great, was
a little bit,
significant,
maybe?
was more significant than the violence that
No?
that the horrifying violence, even those that, of course, civilians were subjected to. Because if I were to ask you today, what's worse, the violence towards the civilians in apartheid South Africa or the violence of the apartheid regime, you would say the violence of the apartheid regime, right?
I don't know. Did they mass murder 1,500 civilians?
I don't know the exact civilian casualties, but
I highly
in
doubt
Algeria, no, they did
South
some brutal
Africa?
stuff. Yeah.
Apartheid? So
Yes.
hold on. How many? Well, I mean, not that it fucking
No,
matters.
but like, yeah, exactly. But the conversation is important to analyze from that perspective, because people that are forced into a corner that see no other way out are going to do this. And and if you don't make any concessions, if you treat the secular Palestinian Authority like they're garbage, and then use them as a part of your security, your surveillance state, and have them be seen as collaborators with the Israeli government that is currently imprisoning and defending the settlers, like you said, the fundamentalist religious freaks in the West Bank, then of course Palestinians that are going to be like, well, what the fuck? Well, this is our two-state solution. This is our peaceful coexistence. That like we're losing our homes. We're getting bullied in our own neighborhoods. We have dudes from Brooklyn and Long Island coming in and being like, this is my house now. Like, if you see that as your peaceful coexistence as a pathway forward, you are inevitably radicalizing people to react to that in more and more violent ways. And that is entirely in the hands of the Israeli government to scale back, regardless of how Israeli people feel about the matter, whether they are understandably paranoid and understandably scared or not. I mean, remember, the first Intifada was rocks. The second one was bombs, like suicide vests and suicide bombs in public transit. It has escalated throughout years as the Israeli occupation has gotten worse and worse. And this is a reality that even former Israeli officials recognize and reckon with and ask for change on. You know what I mean?
100%. Dude, I understand everything you're saying.
Like, people forget, like in the 90s, there was at least some form of freedom of travel between Israel proper, West Bank, and Gaza. There were the border walls and the freedom of movement, freedom of travel was not stopped. It was not restricted. And look where we're at now. What's up?
In the 90s, I feel like there were a lot more talks of peace that seemed actually close. Like, it didn't seem that impossible back then, from what I remember.
Yeah, and then what happened? The one dude, the one dude who was like, okay, guys, look, I'm a Zionist. I think that we should, at the very least, maintain the security of the Israeli state in a reasonable way. We have to fucking reason with these guys. He was called a pussy and then assassinated. And the dudes that literally wanted him assassinated are now in positions of power.
Yeah, it's
and they have been voted for. They've been voted into office over and over and over and over again.
Okay, so just to be clear, these fringe right freaks are like they've been getting more support, but like the reason they're in power, they don't usually get a lot of support in the parliament. Netanyahu was forced into some really fucked up psychotic coalitions with fringe freak, genocidal maniacs.
Yeah, that's the latest government that he put together just to stay in power.
It's worth mentioning that it doesn't have wide support amongst Israelis.
Yeah, but even look, there is a member in the Knesset that immediately after immediately after October 7th came out and was like, this is directly the responsibility of the government and the occupation. This is why people are.
It all goes back to the Crusades. I mean, I would argue it even predates the Crusades, right? Because again, a lot of this is predicated on like, ideas of blood libel, and like blood libel definitely predates the Crusades, right? By like 1,000 years almost.
Retaliating and he was right. So I'm not saying that there aren't voices. It's just that the voices are deafened. The voices are additionally deafened when any kind of retaliatory action is immediately weaponized. It's expected and weaponized to make the Israeli population become even more reactionary and demand
Drake
more
the
blood.
Snake.
Let me just ask you this then, and the analogy I gave you, okay, just to get a direct answer, where as the terrorist attacks are happening, there's people calling, saying, my neighbors are being shot by terrorists right now, and there's people saying, go Palestine. Are they talking about Palestinian freedom, or are they encouraging Hamas to kill Israelis?
I don't know what people are. I don't know what their demands are.
It's not unreasonable for me to assume that.
No,
yeah?
it's not unreasonable.
And
for you
I
to
mean,
assume that.
listen, I think.
And if you're Palestinian, for the record, I'll take it one step further. Look, you talked about the paranoia that that Israelis feel towards Palestinians or Hamas, right? And I will say this as well. I think that if you are Palestinian and it is understandable that they see this as an emancipatory action. It doesn't have to be right, and it's not right, but it does not matter because for them, this is the first time that they have seen like they've seen the security apparatus fall apart. That they've seen the barriers that were designed, that were constructed around Gaza, get bulldozed.
Dude, I got no problem with them breaking through the borders, like and doing some kind of shit. Maybe I mean I do have a problem, but let's say
What kind of shit though?
they attacked a military outpost, they attacked settlers. I'm not saying I'm okay with it.
Like, again, people trying to frame Ethan Klein here, right? People trying to frame Ethan Klein as someone who's like pro-Israeli genocide of the Palestinians. He's literally not. All he's asking is for like condemnation of like the slaughter of 1,000+ civilians, which honestly should be a very, very easy thing to do for people on the left. That's a very low bar.
But like this is more acceptable. But like going and roaming through a kibbutz and murdering families is like I just don't think there's any room for exceptions there.
No,
there's
I
a big difference. You know what I mean?
I
like I understand and I know you do. I'm just explaining for myself.
Yes,
here.
civilian targets are never seen as appropriate. That is 100%.
And it was just
that is
so,
literally
and it was
the rule. That's the rule. Is that like civilian targets are not appropriate.
And again, Israel kills civilians, right?
Yeah.
Not saying that. I know they do. It's like it's not even debated. At least. And serious people who are trying to have a serious conversation about it. And so it seems a little obtuse, though, to look at an activist during a terrorist slaughter saying, let's go Palestine.
Also, Kyryu, I'm sorry that you had to eat human meat. I apologize.
And not say, like, yeah, they're probably cheering on Hamas to kill Palestinians.
I think that whoever people are cheering on is ultimately inconsequential because the actions of the state and the actions of our state, the actions of all Western states,
come on.
is significantly more important.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Like,
again.
And I find it to be unproductive, and I also think it's ridiculous. And I'm not saying you're doing this, but I think it's fucking ridiculous that the indifference that people have to human casualties is gross, and it's never more perfectly demonstrated by people being like, oh. The BLM Chicago account that is like not even affiliated with the organization, even though I don't even like the official BLM organization anyway, is posting a photo, right? And then immediately people are like, look, this is how BLM is. Like, see, you guys have to immediately apologize. Everyone who has like been associated with BLM has to apologize for this random fucking...
To be fair, most of the people who are currently in the game have eaten human meat because we are currently out of food. So apologies, chat.
Instagram account. That is politics. People are using the deaths of Israelis and the deaths of Palestinians to do domestic politics, and I think that's fucking ridiculous. And I also think, and maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't, that a part of the do you condemn the violence, do you condemn the violence, do you condemn the violence rhetoric is I think cynically applied to every single person that wants to talk about ending this conflict, even if it's talking about ending the conflict from the perspective of like Israeli security, where the Harvard Student Organization that got together and said the violence that Israel experienced today is squarely the consequence of the brutal occupation. They said that in the United States of America, the Harvard Students Organization. There's plenty of Jewish Americans that are involved in writing that. What happened? Every single psychopathic VC hedge fund dipshit said, these people need to be punished. Give us their names. And they got their names. They did Canary Mission style psychopathic doxing on students for saying what? For saying exactly the same thing that the Haaretz editorial board wrote, word for word, bar for bar. The Israeli paper of record
I'll say this.
and the Harvard Students Association had an identical perspective. And what happened in America? They got doxxed. There are on the campus right now.
Again,
there are literally their photos are being posted.
I read the letter. It was not that bad. People were going crazy and way overreacting about it. If people are mad about that, it's probably because of the timing.
But there's no timing placed on another a group of people's emancipation. There's no like
Bro, stop.
my
Their timing matters.
no,
Let's not be obtuse about this. It's just this one point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, like what he's talking about here is like if there's a massive terrorist attack, right? Immediately after that, people are not going to be super receptive to like calls for, you know, like are just not going to be receptive to this message, right? Now, regardless of whether how much merit that message has, and in this case, like there's a lot of merit to calling for freedom for Palestinians, right? But doing that using like iconography depicting Hamas, or doing that while almost spreading messages about gloating over like the attack, that is not effective. It's not effective, and it alienates people. And all Ethan is saying is like, I felt really alienated by this, and it would be nice for people to recognize that their rhetorical approach has been incredibly ineffective in this capacity. It's not the time for that is BS. That's what the GOP... Well, look. Let me put it this way. There are ways you can talk about the need for Palestinian freedom without, like, using the attack that just happened so recently that people aren't even in the ground yet as, like... as like the springboard to get that point through, you know? So, like, talking about the need for Palestinian freedom, always do that. But talking about it in necessarily this particular way is going to be incredibly ineffective. Be like saying shooting victims deserved it because of lax gun laws. Kind of, yeah.
You can't cheer on Hamas, dude.
I do. Well, Ethan, I said, you know what I said, on the day of the occupation.
I know you don't, but like we're being a little silly. Like if somebody says go fucking
the only difference
Palestine
between what I said
while people are being murdered, like that's pro Hamas. That's what it is. You're helping. You know what I mean? That's what it is. And I understand all the little subtext.
But what's the distinction? But what's the distinction between what the Harvard student said, what I said, what many Israelis also said as well, versus like what you perceive other people were saying when you don't know the fuller picture of like their perspective?
First of all, I don't have a problem with what they said.
Okay, you don't.
And I'm curious about how soon after this massacre it was released, because I assuming, and we can look into
what's
this.
the barrier of acceptability though? Or is it that you know me personally and you know what my opinion is, which is why
what did you say?
You can understand.
You didn't say anything like you did not say like free Palestine or some shit after as murderers were happening.
I said that resistance to apartheid is always imperfect and there are casualties everywhere, which means there are casualties on the Israeli side and there are going to be casualties on the Palestinian side.
Statement, Hasan.
Yes, but that is ultimately the same as saying free Palestine. It is, because
it's not,
my goal
dude.
is
it's
to
not.
free Palestine.
I know what you mean,
no,
but it's not.
And
it's not
here's
the same, bro.
Here's the thing.
What you're saying is, And again, people, don't be silly about this. I'm talking about the timing. As civilians are being murdered, as the story's developing, people saying this, okay? That's an important distinction. Like, your take about, like, listen, Gazans are under apartheid, they're being genocided and all this, which is all true.
And that is what's causing this violent retaliation.
And it's what's causing this retaliation, which is all true. I'm sorry, but it's not the fucking same as saying, let's go Palestine as bodies are hitting the floor. It's not the same.
No, I understand.
And frankly, I think people are in the
distinction.
Thank you. And I think
people are not being careful.
And I think people are justified in looking at that and thinking like, oh, okay, this person's happy that Israeli citizens are dying. Like what? Like, I'm sorry, but that's a defensible position to take.
No, Ethan, you're expanding on Free Palestine in that moment to I'm glad that Israelis are being murdered. The jump there is, no, let me explain.
Go ahead.
The jump there is literally you knowing what I represent and who I am versus you not knowing. You want to know why? Because you think when I said that, people didn't misconstrue my statements. My name is Hasan. I am the America Deserve 9/11 guy. If you think that the very same forces, the very same people that despise what I
don't know what the timeline is, Charlie. I'm sorry.
To say about blowback and 9/11 did not have the exact same opinion that you have over.
I don't know what other
others
people thought about what you said. Okay, I know that I thought it was a much more respectful, empathic take. And I doubt. And when did you do that as bodies were hitting the floor, Hasan? When did you tweet out your statement about it?
I mean, it was for the next 2 days.
Okay.
Palestinian forces were still deep embedded inside of Israeli proper positions in southern towns. So there were still people dying.
So how about this as a separation?
What?
When people are calling in the news and talking about their neighbors and children being murdered in front of them, is not the time.
Okay. Except,
I mean, it should be kind of obvious. I'm sorry.
I understand.
You
but
just can't do that. I'm sorry. It's
I
gross.
I get what you're saying, except, you as someone who recognizes the violence of the occupation, know that this, by the very same metrics, saying I stand with Israel implies that you stand with Israel's genocidal conduct, right?
Well,
and therefore,
it does kind of
stand with Israel.
It does kind of seem like that. I mean, that is what it says.
Okay.
I disagree with people saying that.
So
if Israel's bombing Gaza, people are saying I stand.
Not just bombing Gaza. Israel's apartheid regime and occupation is endless. It might be sidelined, it might be silent, it might be the constant, but that is still violent.
If Israel is bombing Gaza, okay.
Non-Israelis are bombing Gaza.
Dude, let me.
Okay.
I heard you.
Go on. Sorry. I have to pee so bad.
If you leave, I win.
It's over. I'm holding it.
If Israel IDF is bombing Gaza, and and you're seeing the media that I saw, or even not seeing the media I saw, because that civilians are getting injured or killed, and you say I support Israel in that moment, then I do think you are supporting the IDF and the Israeli regime's fucking apartheid violence.
Okay. Do you think that there is the same energy and same condemnation, even remotely the same condemnation and energy for those who say I stand with Israel, all the way from Justin Bieber using a photo of destroyed Gaza
hold on, let me pull that
to
up.
be like praying for Israel?
Where's that?
What are you praying for, bro? Israel to stop? Like, what's going on? What are you praying for?
That was one of the craziest things I've seen.
Yeah.
He posted a picture of Gaza being basically a whole street block being leveled by Israeli bombs.
Yeah.
And it says, "I'm praying for Israel."
Yeah, he was praying for Israel to stop. Jamie Lee Curtis
That was
posting
crazy.
photos. Jamie Lee Curtis posting a photo of children in Gaza looking up at the sky as Israel is bombing them and going, "I stand with Israel." Israeli flag, like and so many other examples. Charlie Kirk showing photos of the Israeli occupying force entering West Bank homes and posting that video and going, "Look at what the Hamas terrorists are doing." Or many other examples
There's
of
so much dumb,
so many examples of
stupid propaganda.
Palestinian children, babies in cages that the Israeli occupying force put them in, that people are posting and going, "Look what the Hamas is doing. Look at this cruelty.
Yeah,
how cruel, how unusual."
I've seen it all. It's all crazy. It's all psychotic propaganda.
I don't even blame
Super
them.
cynical, fucked up things.
No, it's not. It's not even cynical.
Well, no, the people who create the propaganda are cynical.
It's not even cynical though. I don't even fucking blame them, because yes, there is an asymmetry to this violence, and you have been willingly or you have completely been shut out from one side of that of the recipients of said violence, and therefore you simply do not know. You don't know what the reality is, and by God, there is a lot more examples pre-October 7. There's a lot more examples of like Israeli brutality and Israeli cruelty upon Palestinians. So you're inevitably going to accidentally post that shit
The
like
thing
that.
is, like, with all this nuance and background and history, you still
frankly, what I'm trying to do while listening to this is I'm trying to figure out what the disconnect is. Where are they not able to talk to each other in this moment? You know? Like, where is the disconnect? Apparently, the letter in question mentions today's events did not occur in a vacuum, so it may have been the same day. Yeah.
if we're being serious about peace, you still you can't look at an Israeli, who is traumatized by what happened in context of everything you've said, which I all agree with, and say, yes, but it's horrible, or like yes, but it's like I'm just saying on a human level in the real world.
Well, no, I think what Ethan is saying here is when the bodies of Israelis are hitting the floor, maybe that's not the time to try and say, you're not, using that image and saying, yes, free Palestine. Like I think it is fine to talk about the liberation of Palestinians, but like consider in what context you're doing that. Because there were a lot of people who were doing it in response to October 7th, you know? Like the day of. I think it's fine to contextualize October 7th, a day or two after. I think that's fine. I know I feel like I've done that in my coverage. Ethan, so when the bodies are hitting the floor, you shouldn't be saying those things. Hasan, well, do you know what's happening in occupation? Yeah, like these two things can both be bad, and they are both bad, and they're both bad in very different ways. And it's just that these two different things that are bad happened in an interconnected way, right? God, I feel like my blunt autism needs to be inserted into this conversation.
You can't do that. You can't, like, you have to just give them their grief. You have to give them the fucking you have to grant them. I mean, they made them victims on that day. Those people anyway.
Yeah.
And so, like,
Do you feel like
when you're having a conversation with Israelis and Israelis are looking to the outside world, I'm saying I agree with everything you're saying. But if you're trying to communicate your condolences for grief or something like that, you don't say yes, but.
I think people should be more careful.
I understand why
I think
you
people
do.
should be more careful, and I think people.
Yeah, like that. I think Ethan has a good point there. Like, if you go to somebody's funeral, you're like, I'm so sorry for your loss, but the things that led to their death, the state they lived in had really bad policies, and they were doing some really terrible things. Like, like that's not a great way to convey condolences. I get that. Yeah, I understand that one.
Should be more open-minded. I agree.
I understand why you do it, Hasan.
What?
I'm just talking about in the real world.
Yeah.
When you're talking to an Israeli who it comes from the Israeli perspective. Here's a fucking hard truth that I don't know if people will accept it or not. Listen, if you're born in Gaza, you're going to hate Israel 100%. If you're born in Israel, you're probably going to hate Hamas and maybe Palestinians. I don't know. I don't think most Israelis do, but Hamas for sure. Okay. And so it doesn't even, like, the human experience is constant. It doesn't matter which side of the fence you're born on. You're going to believe, you're going to fucking identify with whatever world experience you're going under.
I don't
That's it.
disagree with you. We've already established this. So now I ask you this. I genuinely, the major point of contention that you and I have in this process is I think it is frivolous and I think it is unproductive to find numerous people that may or may not have even openly condemned Hamas time and time again and be like, you're bad, you're wrong for saying this. Like, sure, they're wrong, but that doesn't change the reality on the ground.
I don't think it's fair to characterize it as like a few rogue tweets. I mean,
because ultimately,
this was a lot of
tweeting-
people.
No, I get it, but
Yeah.
people tweeting whatever the fuck, right, does not stop bombs from falling. People tweeting
Israeli
did not stop
perspective,
more.
bro. That's all I'm saying.
I know, but the Israeli perspective, if tomorrow the Israeli perspective shifted and was like, I mean, 85% of the fucking Israeli population currently thinks that Benjamin Netanyahu is the reason why 2,000 Israelis died. 85% of the Israeli population right now, according to the Jerusalem Post, in the latest
And let's all
polling that
fucking
was done.
remember that when talking about Israelis.
Yes. So some of them, though, obviously think they should be more brutal. Some of them think that Benjamin Netanyahu's occupation, or a much smaller percentage, think that the occupation is responsible for this violence. Now, having said that, do they have a say? Can they unseat Benjamin Netanyahu? Is he going to jail? No, of course not.
He's being tried, actually.
And well, exactly, which is why he built a coalition with fucking Ben Gvir and all the other far right freaks.
He was actually being tried for fraud or some crazy shit.
Yeah, even more far right freaks. And many people are calling for his resignation. He is not going to do that. It's not going to happen. Even if he resigns. Think about it this way.
Hold on, 86% said that the attack from Gaza is a failure of leadership.
Yeah. 86. Yeah, that's what I said.
And by the way, this is just
that's like everybody.
This is Jewish citizens, so this isn't even including obviously the Arab Israelis.
And people who watch this show know when we do polls and it's 86%, that's basically everybody.
Yes, exactly, 100%. Like, who the fuck is dick riding Netanyahu in that point? Because like, from either angle, even if you think like Palestinians should be ethnically cleansed, or you think Palestinians should the occupation should end for the security purposes of Israeli citizens, it doesn't matter. You're still going to arrive at that conclusion that it is Benjamin Netanyahu's fault, because the power player in the situation is what matters. The power player in the situation is entirely responsible. The situation, for example, in Afghanistan, with the Taliban's numbers not withering away, but instead growing in popularity during the American occupation, is a perfect example of what happened, and is a perfect example of what's constant with occupying forces and with their violent means of subjugating, humiliating, and murdering the population. You fucking kill, fuck, who was it? Even that, I forget who this was, but I remember someone saying like, look, in 2014 or in 2004, time and time again, whenever bombing campaigns occur and people die and children die, you know, their relatives are still alive. The ones that are still alive are going to go, well, I know who fucking bombed me. I know who fucking killed my family. I know who fucking dropped bombs on my house. I'm not going to forget that. That is at the heart of the matter. And a real reconciliation with that means completely going back on
Hey, don't my elbow.
75 years of brutal occupation and policies that were deemed necessary at the time for Israeli security, that absolutely was just a cynical way to justify taking more and more land from Palestinians who had no say, who have never had a say in the conversation, and still to this day have no say. I mean, seriously, the resilience of Palestinian people all around the world, of 5 million displaced, 2 million living in Gaza, and another 2.5 million living in the West Bank, is unimaginable. They've never had allies. They've always had imperfect allies and allegiances with people that are just simply only interested in destabilizing Israel. Like, I don't think Iran
just fucking wants to use them as a puppet.
I don't think Iran gives a shit about like Palestinians being free.
Dude.
I think it's very cynical, and they have nothing. They have nothing. They've never had anything. There is no equivalence here between the well-oiled military machine of the Israeli army that has gotten $264 billion in American taxpayer dollars to continue its operations.
Hasan's correct here.
It's just not. There's an asymmetry to the violence, and there's also an asymmetry to the conversation where Palestinians, like living in fucking Gaza, are being called by the BBC, and while bombs are being dropped on their fucking heads, the BBC anchor is like callously being like, "Do you condemn the Hamas violence?" It's
and
like,
by the way, that's fucking stupid.
It's like fucking insane, and they never.
And I don't want people to conflate what I'm saying with BBC asking someone in Gaza taking bombs if they support Hamas.
So here's the thing: I've never, ever in my entire life, ever seen a couple things. I've never seen the American government, the State Department, ever say, this was a provoked act
I agree
of
with you,
violence
Statman.
from Palestinians. I've never seen that. They always say it's unprovoked because it is supposed to be that violence is like.
What do we do in the here and now
is
is very
important. And I know you agree with me on this. I don't think you disagree with me on this at all. They never say this was a provoked act of violence. Okay, that is by design. And I've never seen somebody bring up an Israeli official, okay, to television when Gaza is being bombed and being reduced to rubble, or even when Gaza is not being bombed and the brutal occupation still remains, and been forced to condemn the violent actions of the Israeli government. I've never seen that. I've never heard that. I've never seen that. And I don't think that that will ever happen, because at the end of the day, America wants a military base in the Middle East. America wants a destabilizing force that they see in the Middle East. America wants to keep selling weapons. America still wants conflict. The Western world still wants conflict, and they use Israel to that end, and they will continue doing this in 35 different states in the United States of America, where all of these like free speech, supposedly First Amendment defending states. It is illegal to ask to boycott and ask to make divestments and to ask to sanction the state of Israel. It is illegal. It is, you cannot hold a position as a school teacher without signing a fucking thing that says, I will never participate in the peaceful demand that you want to boycott, divest, or put sanctions on the state of Israel. What?
What countries is that in?
In the United States of America, 35 states.
Oh, 35 states.
37 as of now, I believe, but 35 as of 2021.
That's
Think about that.
nuts. Yeah,
and the AIPAC wrote that legislation. They helped push it. They wrote the legislation. There is no comparison.
And by the way, conservative support for Israel is about as cynical as it gets.
Absolutely.
Their whole worldview is that the Jews are guarding Israel until Jesus comes back.
Yes.
And when he does, he's going to kill all the Jews.
Yes. It is a suicide cult. It is a suicide cult. The assumption that like from the river to the sea, the chosen sons and daughters of God will maintain Israel, and therefore Jesus Christ will come down and defeat Shaitan and Megiddo, is a psychotic suicidal cult. Yet that is the reason why not American Jews, but evangelical Christians, evangelical Protestants are the #1 defenders of the Israeli occupation. They are the ones who push for it. They're the ones who fucking fund the psychopathic settlers that you pointed out.
Yeah.
That they are the ones who open up 501c3s so that they can get tax deductible donations. Yeah, no, I think, yes, of course, Christians play a gigantic role in this. I mean, it was the fucking British that propped up Zionist brigades. Yes,
I mean,
this still
in a
goes back
way,
to England.
in a way, though, it is like, you know,
it all comes back to the Brits.
It's like,
doesn't it?
you know, if you're coming out of World War II at the Holocaust and you're being offered land by Britain and you're
Hold on, your camera's out.
I'm gonna go pee. I'm gonna go pee while you're gone. Oh no, now I'm censored.
I'm fucking winning this argument.
I'm not taking a pause to pee.
Well, they can hear me, right? So I was. So anyway, I'll continue my point as you guys work it out. I was saying that, you know, coming out of the Holocaust, you can hardly blame people who are offered land in their historic religious, most important religious spot by the British, are hardly going to say no to that. Like, you know, it's just, again, the human experience. What group of people would have said, nah, that's not cool?
Right. And then important to note that the same British simultaneously also promised the Arabs in Palestine a state there.
Yeah.
They were literally offering conflicting offers to two different groups of people.
So
good work,
like,
guys.
again, when people, I do think when people try to reduce this conflict as something that's not simple, it's something that's so easy to understand, I don't think is entirely fair. I really don't. Like, the war crimes, the murder, all the shit that's happening is obvious and easy and easy to point to Israel. But if you're talking about like the establishment of Israel, the long feuds over the land going back 75 years, where, again, as Dan was saying, the British went to the Jews after the Holocaust and said, you guys want to live in Jerusalem? And they're like, fuck yeah. And then went to the Palestinians.
They were lobbying for it for a long time too. They wanted that.
Okay.
But they
got the green light.
Right, they got the green light. But yeah,
by all the United Nations or whatever, the League of Nations, where the fuck or I don't know, it was UN.
It was and in fact,
yeah, it was League of Nations.
Originally it was the League of Nations, but no, it was the UN had just been established after World War II, which is what set up the state. And when I was doing kind of a deep dive on all of this history in the past week, I was shocked to see, I guess I maybe knew this at one point, but the USSR was in support of it too. One of the very few times that
you want to know who
the United
else?
States and the USSR were on board with each other.
You want to know who else is a big time supporter too? China. China is a major ally and a major trade partner to Israel. Yes, absolutely.
That's what RFK Jr. was talking about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the COVID doesn't affect the Jews.
Well,
and
no,
the
but yeah,
Chinese.
no, it's not. So you know, remember that when people in the chat will say like, oh, you're fucking major defender of China. No, I think that China is also not exactly a fucking equal party here, or one that is advocating for reasonable solutions. I think that there's a reason why they are not saying anything. They're not coming out with like big declarations as they normally would in an effort to be like, look at America being fucking imperialist again or whatever.
Just to finish my point when you were in the
Go ahead.
bathroom is that I think it's unfairly reductive to say it's not complicated. You know, going back to the establishment of Israel, the duplicity, the English, going back to the skirmishes and all there's been atrocities on both sides from the beginning, okay? Obviously, Israel has continued to take more and more as they've enjoyed the benefit of funding and support from the international community. But to write it off as like the Israelis are just genocidal is unfairly reductive.
I don't think that Israelis are genocidal, even though there are
Good night,
certainly
Storma.
Israelis that are genocidal. There are Americans that are genocidal.
Palestinians are genocidal.
Like, see,
Just
but,
saying,
but-
there's people who are. I'm just saying.
yeah, sure, but
They're
No, like Charlie, I can confirm, like 100%, like evangelicals are, you know, I don't know that they're salivating over the idea of doing that to queer people, but evangelicals fantasize about ways of getting rid of queer people. You know? Not necessarily violently, but like, they're like, we just need to send the queer people to the right therapist. You know? That's what they think. You know, we just gotta send them to the conversion therapy, and then they'll grow out of it. Yeah. Did you see the weird Rapture ad on Fox News? No.
everybody has genocidal mania.
I think that like
Am I not?
Hamas
Is that bother
Hamas
you?
is 1988. No,
Does that bother you that I
no,
said?
of course there are. But the reason why I think it's like laughable is because like, which direction is the genocide happening?
Bro,
You know what I mean? Like it's usually I think that you have moral clarity overall, which is why this is a much more charitable conversation. But I think plenty of people do not have that moral clarity, and when they are using the condemn Hamas line, it's not necessarily to get your perspective. It's to deflect away from you talking about Palestinian emancipation and all of the wrongs that they.
Even though everything you're saying is right.
Okay. Also, like Hasan is correct here. When it comes to like media interviews, right? But like when it comes to like an interpersonal conversation, right? Which is what like Ethan is doing here. Like that's kind of the entire premise of their show, right? Like it starts getting a bit weird when you start, you know, like if you're talking with your friend should be able to be like, oh yeah, no, like fuck those, fuck that terrorist attack, you know, like that should be a pretty easy thing for like someone to do in a casual conversation,
right?
Yeah.
Oh wait, we have the weird Rapture ad. All right, let's lay it on me. Insane Rapture ad on Fox News.
When the rapture occurs, the world will capture the moment. The world...
Oh wait, I should make this big. I should make this big for you guys. Big. I should make it big. Woo. There you go.
When the rapture occurs, the world will capture the moment. The world will
Okay, these captions are also terrible.
reel with concern from watching the strange, mind-boggling, and unbelievable video footage that goes viral across the globe.
Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air.
When Christ comes for his people, it will be in the twinkling of an eye. Billions of people will exit this planet in an instant, but billions will be left behind.
Wait, why do their clothes disappear with them? Why would that why would their clothes go? I guess God doesn't want them to be naked.
It will be chaos on our globe, but incredible, glorious joy in the skies.
Capture a thrilling glimpse of the rapture in The Great Disappearance. In 31 short, easy-to-read chapters, Dr. Jeremiah answers questions about the next event on God's prophetic calendar.
When the rapture...
Also, what is this tie? What is this tie, dude? Oh man, I need to find something real quick. Let's see. Can I find it? I need to find it, dude. Okay, wait. Maybe I can find the video here. There was like a weird parenting TikTok that went viral where like parents are like reenacting or not reenacting, but like doing TikToks of like their children disappearing, like their children got taken up in the rapture. It's so weird. Rapture TikTok. Maybe I can find it, dude. I've shown this one on stream before, but it's not the one I'm looking for. Here, I'll just I'll throw this one up real quick while I continue to look for it. Like, people are just really weird about the rapture.
Jesus was seen.
Where, Rachel?
Oh my god.
Show me to me, please. Send it to me, Rachel.
It was literally seen in Ohio.
Please send it to me. Oh, now, please.
Oh my god. This is
Okay,
crazy.
Rachel, which one? Send it to me, baby. Which one? Is it on TikTok?
Okay. Mommy, I'm kidding.
Rachel, don't do that.
Jesus was seen.
Where?
Just like she just like totally like absolutely bought it, dude. And it's just like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, rapture's happening, let's go. It's rapture time, baby. Let me find this. Ah, man, I'm not gonna be able to find this video that I'm thinking of. Damn it. Whatever. It's fine. You get the idea.
Diminish this idea that there are Palestinians, terrorists mostly. I'm not saying all Palestinians. I don't think most Palestinians even support Hamas. That saying that Palestinians who want genocide of Jews isn't relevant because, again, it affects the Israeli paranoia. It affects the Jewish paranoia, the paranoia psyche, the Israeli psyche. So, like, even though it's absurd, you say that's silly because the Israelis are doing the genocide, still fucking feeds into the pathology of what it means to be an Israeli.
Yeah. I understand where you're coming from, but ultimately, you know, getting swept away in demanding condemnations over and over again, is entirely unproductive and also not reflective of the reality of the American population's attitudes towards the defense of Israel and
I don't think that's a fair
occupation.
I don't think that's a fair assessment of what I'm asking.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying.
No, you're saying.
But like, there is
the expectation of constant condemnation of Palestinians against Hamas is not what I'm advocating for.
If you want,
just to be totally clear, because I know people think that about me.
If you want to talk about, like, if right now you want to talk about Palestinian emancipation, whether you are Jewish or whether you are Arab, whether you are Muslim, it does not matter. If you talk about Palestinian emancipation at any point during this endless occupation and senseless brutality, you are immediately met with condemn Hamas. Why do you love Hamas? Why do you want to
I'm not
believe?
support that. That's a different thing.
I know,
feel.
but
okay,
that
I
is-
just want to
but-
make that
but
clear.
You and I having this back and forth.
I just want to make it clear because people think that's what I think, and I want to make it clear that what I'm saying is different entirely to expecting everyone to constantly condemn Hamas. That's not what I think people need to do.
What you have a different perspective on the matter that is not widely shared in the Western world, and that is no better demonstrated by the actions that people are taking against the fucking Harvard Students Association versus like what the Israeli paper of records perspective is.
My
which
dude,
is identical
thank you
to that.
very much for the
sad
raid.
part about
Welcome,
what you
Raiders.
said is that you say Westerners don't agree with that, and you're right. But a lot of Israelis do, and that's fucked up. That people, you know what I mean? Because that's not what people see.
Okay.
Even though
now that we've
government-
established that
yeah.
though, now that we've established that, do you understand that what I mean when I say there's a double standard with the callous indifference that people demonstrate to the death toll over and over again? I mean, we're talking about dudes that literally Benjamin Netanyahu, when in 2008, people living under brutal occupation in the world's largest open-air prison in Gaza, where 2 million people live and 47% of that population is under the age of 14 and under, okay? Where their water, electricity, like you also pointed out, is controlled by Israel. They did a peaceful march, a demonstration
Having to share pain,
for a right to return. Thousands of children, babies, and adults alike were ruthlessly shot at by Israeli snipers in that right to return as they walked and demonstrated and walked towards that fence, okay? Walked towards that border fence that traps them inside of Gaza. Thousands. While that was happening, if you had seen, or maybe you weren't paying attention, maybe you didn't see this, the media coverage of the matter was some of the most disgusting I have ever seen. While that was happening, the Trump administration was pushing to further annex Jerusalem and offer it in its entirety and recognize it as Israeli, which is, of course, a major point of contention and has never been allowed by the international authority. Completely unjustifiable, inhumane, immoral. Okay? So on the one hand, the Trump administration, alongside the Israeli government, were celebrating this action. On the other hand, on the other side of Israel proper, you had babies being fucking slaughtered, medics, press, journalists, and
there's a double standard.
Yes,
absolutely.
Now hold on. This is really important. This is really important to understand.
I just like Ethan agrees with this.
Okay. If you demonstrate peacefully and get slaughtered, and then Benjamin Netanyahu goes on television and says, callously, these are telegenically dead children. Palestinians have telegenically dead children. If former Israeli ambassadors are going on TV and saying Hamas is using these babies as meat shields, that somehow Israel is like RoboCop, or this like force that simply cannot stop itself from butchering, slaughtering fucking Gazans, and it's always in the hands of Hamas, and that is the constant position in both American media, and it is reflected in polling over and over again, where more than 50% of Americans side with Israel on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and only 9% of Americans actually side with Palestinians on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Constantly going back and forth about like what the DSA affiliated organization doing like a Free Palestine demonstration or whatever in the aftermath of October 7 and saying that feels like you're in defense of Hamas, sweaty, is unproductive, and it also doesn't even reflect anything. It doesn't reflect the reality. We know that in the Western world,
bro, it's
Palestinians
emotion.
have no.
It's like it's emotional. You just
I
can't
understand.
blame people for
I
seeing that and
understand
getting
it's
upset.
emotional. But if
You
you
just can't.
recognize that, then you recognize when you see a sea of I
do
stand with
recognize
Israel.
that,
I
dude.
stand with Israel. Israel must ethnically cleanse Gaza.
I do.
And
I do
varying
recognize
degrees
that.
of people saying that.
I always have.
Then how are Muslims in America that have lived in a massive surveillance state post 9/11? How are Muslims in the Western world who are constantly treated like fucking dogs, who literally are used as a political pawn, even though their homes have been destabilized by America's unjustifiable post 9/11 actions in the form of the war on terror? How are they supposed to think, oh well, I guess everybody wants us fucking dead. I guess everybody wants the Palestinians to die. Everyone thinks that this is the normal position. Everyone thinks this is the constant position. Like, of course, they are going to look at that and think the exact same things that you're saying Israelis are feeling, the exact paranoia that Israelis are feeling. And quite frankly, if we look at the asymmetry of violence, if we look at the displacements, if we look at the subjugation, the brutal colonial occupation of not only Palestinians, but many other Muslim countries that have also been ruthlessly occupied and slaughtered by Western coalition forces, it is perfectly understandable and well within the right of Muslims to look at that and be understandably paranoid and not necessarily paranoid, thinking that you are going to have Hamas forces do a second Holocaust in Israel, when the exact opposite is happening to Palestinians right now. Do you disagree?
No.
Okay. All right. That's why.
Yeah, this feels like the conversation in a nutshell. Like what? Why is this being treated like it's a disagreement? I don't understand. I don't understand.
Why I think it's unproductive that a lot of, not you, but like especially so many liberals in America are like, oh man, the optics of this look really bad, and also Palestinians really fucked up their chances of emancipation. It's like you have to be oblivious to the reality, and I know you're not, but others have to be oblivious to the reality of the Palestinian existence to make such callous takes, to be like, oh well, optics sweaty. No, the optics in that situation just imply
it does
that
matter. Optics do matter.
I know optics matter, but optics don't matter because optics matter in general, but optics do not matter when we talk about the plight of Palestinians, because there's not a single person that is out there defending them in the Western world, whether it be elected officials or whether it be people in the media, and those who choose to do that, those who choose to stand up and say, no, Palestinians deserve emancipation. I'm not saying you're not one of these people, but those who do stand up and say that, okay, they get immediately cast as a terrorism defender, and I saw the
yes,
spiritual
people go give
my
dude a follow on
America.
Twitch, please.
We are still living in the rubbles of post 9/11 America, and its attitude towards Muslims and its attitude towards Islam in general. And oh man, it does seem like this is somehow even worse than that, because I guess it didn't impact Americans directly, so they can be even more bloodthirsty without any fear that there could be violent retaliation.
Right. I think we both have said our piece on this, and maybe we can move on to another topic now, because there is other stuff I want to talk
Ben
about.
Shapiro got mad at me.
I didn't actually watch that yet.
Yeah.
Are we going to get to the Taylor Swift film soon?
Wait, is that it? Clearly not. The most replayed segments are coming up.
Hold on, there's stuff.
Oh,
there,
okay.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
This great March of Return is fucking crazy though. Just reading about this. Fucking 100 and what does it say?
Are you talking about 2018 March, the freedom, the right to return?
I'm just reading about it. 40 kids, 190 Palestinians were killed.
You know what the IDF, official account posted and then deleted?
Yeah, the March of Return, I believe, was a largely peaceful protest against the oppression of Palestinians, and the state of Israel responded with snipers who just massacred peaceful protesters. When it comes to Ethan, I feel like Ethan is talking to Hasan's audience, but that makes talking to Hasan clunky, as Ethan and Hasan mostly agree, and Ethan doesn't make clear that his disagreements are directed at his audience. I mean, maybe Ethan just needs to straight up say to Hasan that the audience he's cultivated doesn't understand this, right? Because like I've peered into like the Hasan like community subreddits and stuff, and like it's bad. Can we ban Hasan? I mean, I think Hasan is fine in some respects.
Shouts out to B'Tselem one more time.
B'Tselem is very good.
Okay, wonderful Israeli organization, by the way.
I think the problem with their convos is that they're both talking to his audience. Yeah. I think taking pot shots at a community can be hazardous. I mean, sure. I just mean, like, I know that, like, the Hasan community, like the discords and stuff are like kind of notorious for not being great. Like there are people in my audience who love watching Hasan, and more power to them, but they're like, yeah, I've been in the Discord and it's awful in there. Like, you know, like I'm just saying what the impression I have of some of that community, and the community that he's cultivated is, needing a bit more guidance, I think. Imagine someone coming in here and accusing us all of being bottoms. I mean, you all are bottoms, so.
They captured it before IDF deleted it, because this shows the indifference.
What did they tweet?
They said every single bullet was accounted for. Here, read out the casualty reports.
Says 190 Palestinians were killed, 40 kids, thousands were injured.
There's videos of IDF snipers filming, like putting their phone like this, propped up against the optics, sniping a child, killing them, hitting them in the head, celebrating that his legs flew up in the air as he was shot.
Not the
and
mods,
others around them
some of the
celebrating.
mods.
That's fucking, I mean, that's demonic.
So when you see that, when you experience that, and then the American dogs in American media refuse to reckon with that violence and instead turn around and have former Israeli officials say these are Hamas-backed operatives, like the fucking 2-year-old or 4-year-old, the pregnant mother that was shot. These are Hamas operatives that deserve to be fucking killed for peacefully demonstrating. What do you do? What can you do? No one hears you, and you're constantly backed into a corner. You are going to retaliate. That is, of course, going to happen.
And Israel needs to understand that. The Israelis,
and I think some Israelis do.
They need to understand that. And that's,
okay.
It's
so
it's that mutual empathy. Like, Israelis need to understand why Hamas is attacking them. If they can't understand that, then nobody can be helped. I mean, it's just, it's insane to not see their perspective.
The major thing here is that I think, there's a reason why Israel did not have local media go to the kibbutzes that you were talking about that were slaughtered. They originally went immediately. They said, we're having foreign press come here, right? There was a reason for that, because they know that internally, the opinion of the Israeli population currently doesn't matter. The Western opinion.
I think the Israeli opinion on the massacre was pretty unified, dude.
Well, what they say about that is that they don't. Everybody's already.
Hold on one sec, Hila. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, she has a pink shore mic? I didn't even know they made those. That's cool. I want one.
Saying everybody is already in such grief and broken that they don't need to show this terrible footage, but
I mean,
they're saying it's important for the world to see what happened, so that's why.
Yeah, they're doing propaganda. It's like, not surprising, is it?
Yeah. No, it's not. But I'm just saying that, like, I think that
it did happen.
I think that there is more.
They're not like putting the bodies there and like putting them in fucked up ways.
Of course not.
I'm just saying,
That's not what I'm saying at all.
It's not that cynical to send in the press.
I think that
it's not cynical at all. In that case,
I think that the coverage from certain Israeli outlets on the matter is more critical on the Netanyahu administration, and showing that, I think, and like the interviews that I've seen as well of the parents fucking demanding, basically kicking out Israeli Knesset members that are visiting the hospitals, yelling at them, telling them to fuck off, telling them that this is their fault. I think that, like, there's two different reasons for obviously that level of anger. Some of which say you did this to us by being more brutal, and that this violence, of course, is going to be a constant, and it's going to be a violent retaliation. And then there's also the people that are saying you are not violent enough, right? But ultimately, everyone is critical of the Israeli government at this point from different angles, and I think that's the reason why they care more about the Western media's opinion than anything else, because they don't want to repeat the mistakes that happened last time in both 2018 and also the Shireen Abu Akleh.
Spitfire, if it's any consolation, I've heard some people in this community, I'm not naming names, have been known to not be bottoms. It's as far as I can go. It's as far as I can go, okay? It has been known to happen.
Murder. Again, in the hands of an Israeli sniper that the Israeli government said was actually Palestinians, and Western media immediately disproved that. And then what did the IDF do? What did the IDF do?
I don't know.
When a wonderful voice for good, a Christian woman, a Christian Palestinian, and an American citizen, Shireen Abu Akleh, was murdered as she was on her way to one of these refugee camps. She had a press vest on. She had a press helmet on. She was shot in the neck so that she could be assassinated. Okay? This was a major issue. They wanted to do. Sorry, this is really fucked up.
Yeah. By the way, Hasan's right. This is really fucked up.
They went to her funeral and beat the shit out of people and ripped the Palestinian flag off of her. Palestinians can't have a moment of peace in this fucking world. They can't even mourn the dead. Sorry. The IDF went in and beat the shit out of.
Yeah, like, I mean, there's footage of it, right? Like,
Police have attacked mourners and pallbearers at the funeral of the Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh in Jerusalem. The Al Jazeera reporter was shot in the head while covering a raid by Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank on Wednesday. Earlier
deliberately shot in the head. It wasn't an accident.
Today, an Israeli officer was shot dead and several Palestinians injured during an army raid to make arrests near Jenin in the West Bank. It follows several weeks of mounting violence with dozens killed on both sides. Our Middle East correspondent Tom Bateman reports.
Shireen Abu Akleh was one of the best-known voices to Palestinians. Now in death, a national symbol. But grief for a revered reporter was to turn to fear and panic for the mourners. Israel's security forces had entered the hospital gates.
Obviously her coffin.
As Palestinians tried to walk the coffin out. The police fired stun grenades and pushed the crowd back.
Whoa.
Many rushed for cover inside.
We've had complete chaos with people trying to get inside. I saw a woman with a very young baby, a patient or somebody who was here just at the hospital, caught in the middle of a huge crowd trying to get inside.
And even the pallbearers had to retreat as police kicked and beat them with batons.
Absolutely monstrous, dude.
And the coffin slips to the ground. The force says it acted to stop what it called incitement and stone throwing.
Yeah, they were throwing stones because you showed up in riot gear to a fucking funeral, assholes. And then started beating people and shooting stun grenades. Yeah, maybe some people responded to that by throwing some shit. They murdered her and they couldn't even give her, like, peace for her funeral. Dude.
Shireen Abu Akleh was shot in the head covering an arrest raid by Israel's army. Reporters on the scene say the gunfire came from the soldiers, but Israel maintains Palestinian gunmen may have fired the fatal shot.
The Palestinians did not kill Shireen Abu Akleh.
But for her loved ones, it was time to say a final goodbye. At her Christian funeral mass, eulogies to a life of purpose. And outside, one of Jerusalem's biggest outpourings of Palestinian grief.
Yeah, by the way, notice, just real quick, she was a Christian, chat. Like, there's a gigantic cross on the top of that. They were carrying her to the church.
Jerusalem's biggest outpourings of Palestinian grief in decades. Tens of thousands wound their way around the old city's walls. They marked yet another death in a conflict where it is almost agonizingly routine, but which has brought the world's spotlight back and remembered a life that should never have ended this way. Tom Bateman, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Yeah. So honestly, he's right to cry. It is horrific what they did to her. And to the people who just wanted to honor her life and her contributions.
The Palestinians that were mourning her at her funeral, that were holding her casket and ripped the Palestinian flag off of her casket. How is that allowed? How can that continue? How do you not see that? That's in the West Bank. This is a Christian woman. This is not a Muslim. This is not Hamas. This is a journalist that was beloved in the Muslim world. And she was assassinated for speaking out and trying to shine a light on the atrocities. It's hard to look, it's very hard to hold my composure on this. This is something I've talked about for years and years. But when that kind of ruthlessness, I sound like fucking Jordan Peterson when he talks about men. Jesus Christ. When that kind of brutality is so normal, so normalized, when that's the everyday existence of Palestinians in the supposed collaborative project with the Israeli government, how can you expect them to do anything but violently retaliate? There's no end in sight for this. And now you have cynical pieces of shit on social media. If you want to talk about social media and people saying stuff on social media, you have cynical liberal commentators that supposedly adorn the politics of radical emancipation saying, oh, how wonderful that Joe Biden is trying to create an exit corridor, a humanitarian corridor for those who are being bombed in Gaza right now to escape through Egypt. That's still ethnic displacement. That is not humanitarian. It is completely unjustifiable. Completely. There is no equivalent. There is no moral equivalence. There is no equivalence whatsoever. And there is no symmetry in the way that this is covered in the Western media. And that is by design. They refuse.
Erica, I'm really sorry for your loss. It's really difficult. Yeah, we covered that earlier in stream, Paladin. It's horrific.
Use to show Palestinians as humans, and they have very successfully been able to dehumanize them.
Did Ethan change his position on this conflict? Honestly, I don't think Ethan has a position. As far as I can tell, we're almost 2 hours into this conversation. As far as I can tell, Ethan has not disagreed with any of the things Hasan has said. Really. Mainly, it seems like the point of disagreement is how the message is being delivered.
There are voices out there. There are voices in Israel. There are voices out there who see it, who see the brutality, who see the endless humiliation that Palestinian people have endured. And I stand with them, and I don't care. I will always stand with them, even if there is a moment of violent retaliation. Okay? They have nothing. They have no allies. They have nothing in the world. And people celebrate their destruction. It's happening right in front of our eyes. There's nothing. There's no equivalent. It is so horrifying that this can happen in the supposed only democracy in the Middle East, the supposed beacon of prosperity, in a sea of barbaric Arabs, right, who do mass rapes and love to behead people. All of these, some of which are true, by the way, I know. All of these are racist canards specifically to heighten the tensions and to justify what Israel is doing in broad daylight in moments that the world even chooses to care about paying attention to what's going on in Gaza. That's why I wanted to make the distinction that what goes on in the West Bank, this is constant. This is every day for Palestinians, every day. It's crazy. Like, I know it's, you know, you can say like, oh, land back movements are supposed to be violent or whatever, but there's nothing more violent than this. This is the violence. It's just that it's legalized. It is state-backed. So we are not trained to see it as a violent act. That's the difference. It's only violent or it's only terrorism when it's a non-state actor or a foreign adversary that engages in it. And that's why, if you look at the United Nations, if you look at British or European authorities that have spoken out, correctly condemned Russian atrocities in Ukraine, you will hear silence when it comes to Israel and what Israel has done and what Israel continues to do to Palestinians. Disgusting. Sorry.
I think I can say I don't know. Seeing this,
it's fine. I'm good.
Seeing this and hearing you talk about it, I do probably feel like I haven't been as empathetic with the Palestinian experience as I haven't. You know what I mean? Like, I can fully acknowledge that I haven't been 100% empathetic with that, and that, you know, my perspective is different. or I mean, not right, but I'm just saying, like, seeing this and seeing you react makes me feel like, you know, some of the dealings I've had with people on Twitter and stuff is like, even though I disagree, is probably not empathetic enough towards this perspective. This is really sad.
Like, dude's willing to listen and learn and grow. Like, it takes a lot to say something like Ethan did, especially in this political space we inhabit, you know? If Ethan does want to have a serious conversation on Israel-Palestine, he needs to have a serious discussion with Ben Burgess, Sam Cedar, or Ilan Pop. I don't know who that is, about the conflict. I mean, I don't know if Ethan Klein knows who any of those people are, you know? Also, hello, Valhalla Vidya. From what I know of Ethan, he's not pro-Israel. He cares about the people of Palestine. Yeah. Oh, he does know Sam Cedar? Okay. Cool. I don't know if Ethan would reach out to Sam Cedar, though, you know? I don't know. Maybe I just don't know Ethan well enough.
You know, it's just one example of many. It's every life is important. Like, you know, the Israeli lives are important too. I recognize that. Just that there's no one out there that will speak out, and those who do are immediately branded as supporters of terrorism. I'm not saying you're doing that, Ethan, but the reality is, when you have the audacity as like a journalist in British media or a journalist in American media to sit across the desk from someone whose family has been murdered and to say, do you condemn the violence of Hamas, when you have never asked an Israeli official if they condemn the ongoing occupation, when you turn a blind eye to it? I'm sorry, I don't give a fuck what like some random person said about land back movements being violent on Twitter. Because one is the entire state. One is the entire media apparatus. The other is some fucking person on Twitter. And I don't know what the full scope of their perspective is, but I can tell you, I know the full scope of the perspective of mainstream media and the fucking dogs.
Okay, we got Katya on board.
And the fucking violent dogs.
Oh yeah, of course, Ethan and Sam Cedar know each other. Jesus. Yeah, with the Steven Crowder thing. Yeah, of course. My goodness.
In all of the European nations, with the exception of Ireland,
I feel
a fool. Regularly supplied weapons, turned a blind eye to the atrocities, and still to this day, cynically and in the most disgusting way, declare that any kind of anti-Zionist sentiment, no matter who speaks it, could be Jews, could be Arabs, could be Palestinians, could be Muslims, is anti-Semitism. It's so unimaginable. You have people in England. A woman or a man who had a Palestinian flag was seized by the authorities and was arrested. Now they're talking about possibly declaring the Palestinian flag to be a terrorist flag. That conflation between Hamas and the Palestinians is the policy. That is the policy that is cynically built up, propped up, and defended over and over again, so that when babies are dying in Gaza, when children are being slaughtered in Gaza, when settlers spit on West Bank Palestinians,
hey, Metal Kitty Mom, how you doing?
Don't get punished, and as a matter of fact, the families of said victims get punished. When they're ruthlessly thrown out of their homes, you can still always turn around and justify it by either turning a blind eye to the atrocities or only covering the atrocities when there is any sort of retaliation from Hamas or from the Palestinian side in general.
I mean, as a Fortnite, as a content creator myself, like, and I know I don't have an audience even a fraction the size of Ethan Klein's, but like, it can be pretty overwhelming sometimes, you know? Like, if you have something that like gets seen by a ton of people, like, it can get like panic attack inducing. Like, it can be kind of traumatic, you know? Like, and if that thing that is happening, if that traumatic experience is, paired with like, a targeted attack by an extremist terrorist group whose stated goal is wiping out people like you, and then you like look at the audience reaction and it's like, how it was, I can understand why he hasn't like that's hard to grow beyond, Hey, there's a sub goal. What's the reward? The sub goal reward is a analog horror series. So if you guys would like to watch some analog horror after this, you can donate a few more subs. Hey, Holly Hoomst. I will look at your bun. I accept this. I love it. So much. Going on family medical leave soon. Take care of your mom while she battles cancer. Going to be away for about 2 months. Well, I'm glad you're able to take medical leave to do that. I imagine that's going to be really difficult. Are you going to be away from us for 2 months, or are you just being away from work for 2 months? Right? What a precious little baby. Thank you for sharing this bun with us. I feel like we needed this to cut through some of the